I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. I got love, peace, got war and peace inside my DNA. I got power, poison, pain, and joy inside my DNA.
Hello guys, welcome back to my channel The Fanfic Fantasy. Join us as we explore the world of fanfiction and fantasy and bring you the best story and discussions. This is the first part of What If Neglected Naruto Was Trained by Rayleigh. So give this video a like and subscribe for more videos in future. So let's get into the fanfic. Cover: a young Naruto sitting in the woods, a fire in front of him, with dirt and grime all over his body as he stuffs his face with food. Speaking with a full mouth to a shadowed figure leaning against a tree that had a large boar on a stick over the fire. The man, the myth, the legend, Gold Roger had been captured by the Marines, a pirate that had the skill and power to circumnavigate the dangerous stretch of sea that wound around the world known as the Grand Line, reaching the final island there and attaining the title of King of the Pirates. So, it came as a shock to the entire world that this man had been apprehended by the Marines after evading them for so long with plenty of close calls along the way. And now he was here, about to be executed in Logtown, the place of his birth, a fitting and ironic end as far as the Marines were concerned. This man was to be an example to all pirates, to dissuade any that would believe that they could act outside of the world government's laws and disrupt public order. The large man was walked to the top of the execution platform, flanked by the two men that would be his executioners. Despite being cuffed and with little to no chance of escape, the Pirate King had a smile on his face. His mere presence had a gravity that silenced the usually bustling square as the bystanders watched with bated breath and wide eyes. The executioners made Roger kneel, that way the grim affair could be done. All the while the smile on his face was still present. Before the deed could be carried out, one brave soul spoke up from the crowd with a question that would spark a new era on the sea. The bystander asked Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, where he kept his great treasure. My treasure? Well, anyone that wants it can have it, but to find it you'll have to search the world. I left it all in that place. The Pirate King's smile grew even wider from his declaration, watching the crowd go into an uproar at the world-shaking news before his execution went through ... and the Pirate King officially died. But his words had kicked up a powerful storm in the world. The great age of pirates had begun. On this island of soap bubbles near the massive Red Line, the landmass that split the world into fourths in conjunction with the Grand Line running perpendicular to it. In a certain bar were two people that had just heard the news of the Pirate King's passing. A woman was standing behind the bar's counter, cleaning the glasses and looking at the man that sat in a stool in front of her. A single empty glass was in front of the man, slight wetness in his eyes from the news of his captain's death, but ultimately decided not to dwell on it. Roger would be laughing his head off if he knew his right-hand man, the Dark King Silver's Rayleigh, was crying over his death. The woman took her cigarette out of her mouth, put the glass away with her free hand, and let out a puff of smoke. Looking to the man that had a solemn smile on his face, the woman leaned over the counter and addressed him. Wow, I never expected the great Rayleigh to be a crier, she teased the man in an attempt to lighten the mood. The man adjusted the glasses on his face and let out a wry laugh as he brought his head up to look the woman in the face. Now, Shaki-chan, even I can read the occasion and act appropriately, he answered and pushed the glass to the now named Shaki, an unspoken request for a refill that she obliged. Does it hurt? She asked, turning serious as she placed the alcoholic beverage onto the counter. I'd like to say it doesn't since Roger chose this, but it does. Rayleigh lifted his glasses to rub his eyes and smiled. No use crying about it, though. Life goes on and he went out on his own terms. Not many men on the sea with our profession can say that. Rayleigh chuckled and got up from the stool. Well, Ray-san. Shaki put out her cigarette and looked to the man as he went to leave. What are you planning to do now? You are retired now, after all. She walked out from behind the counter and stood behind him, smirk still present on her face. I think I'm going to go traveling a little to get my mind off things. Roger's death will change the world as we know it, and whether it's for the better will be seen. The new generation will have to take the helm now, Rayleigh answered the woman. Traveling? You'd think that you had your fill of that, Shaki quipped. Don't you think you should lay low for a bit, Ray-san? No doubt the Marines and the world government are still on the lookout for you, the woman pointed out to the man. Maybe they are, but I've still got fight in me. And how long do you plan on disappearing on me this time? She giggled at the look the man gave. I won't be gone that long, Shaki-chan. Like I said, I'm just going for a walkabout to get my mind off things. He defended himself. Your last one lasted for about a year, I believe. She teased the man harder and watched him sweat drop at the fact she used that against him. I was hoping that with you being forced into retirement, you'd finally make an honest woman of me, Ray-san. The woman closed one eye and looked at the man that was unamused with all her teasing. An honest woman. Last I looked. You rip people off with this bar of yours, Rayleigh deadpanned to the unapologetic woman. Gotta make a living somehow, Ray-san. It's hard out there for a young lady like me, she shrugged. The former first mate of the Pirate King kept quiet, knowing that pointing out that the young lady wasn't so young would only end in pain. I'm sure you'll manage without me for a bit, Shaki-chan. Rayleigh smiled and walked with a pack slung over his shoulder. Try not to stay out too long this time, Ray-san. Shaki waved the man out. Come on, I'm not that bad. 4 years later, today, October 10th, on an island in the South, blue triplets were born to Minato Namikaze and his wife Kushina Uzumaki. The first to be brought into the world was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, an apparent carbon copy of his father, complete with blonde hair and ocean blue eyes and oddly enough whisker marks on his face. The next to come was named Menma Uzumaki Namikaze, who inherited the red hair of the Uzumakis, only his was more of a blood crimson coloring that in the right lighting could appear black, and he also had whisker marks on his face. And finally, the only girl of the triplets being Natsumi Uzumaki Namikaze, who, like her eldest brother was with their father, was the spitting image of her mother with similar hair color and violet eyes. The three newborns were currently sleeping soundly after the ordeal that had befallen their island only a few hours prior. In fact, it had started mere minutes from their birth. Not even 10 minutes of being in the world. The babes were stolen from their parents by a mysterious masked man that intended to steal the being known as the nine-tailed fox from within the container, Kushina. The fox was a rampaging beast made of energy that was found on their tiny island, with its true explanation and origins being lost to time but believed to predate the Rakuto Sennin. Somehow the masked man had located the expectant parents despite the great lengths they had gone through to hide the birth, knowing that Kushina would weaken during the process, and her seal holding the beast along with her. The man had shown his ruthlessness as he killed the nurses that were attending, one of them being the wife of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Kono Hagakure. He threatened the children's lives without hesitation, going as far as to plant explosive tags onto the crib containing them, forcing the father to get the infants out of range of the man before he could detonate them. Not too long after, through a series of events that allowed Minato to rescue Kushina and bring her to the children, he managed to use teleportation to move the great beast outside of the safe house he left his family. It took convincing, but the man had managed to get his wife on board with resealing the fox into their newborns. Unfortunately, the man's sacrifice didn't come to light as his predecessor, knowing what Minato would most likely be planning, had knocked him unconscious and decided to lay his own life on the line to protect his village and avenge his wife, hoping that he'd be able to see her again. The aged man used a powerful forbidden technique to seal the beast reluctantly into the infants, but the demon wasn't going to take being imprisoned lying down and resisted the man who was struggling because of his age. When it seemed that the Sarutobi would fail in his endeavor, slowly dying from the strain that the technique placed on his old body and brought to a knee on the verge of losing consciousness, Naruto opened his eyes with a fussed expression and with no real way of knowing the situation, and never having seen either of the two in front of him before, the blonde babe was clearly perturbed and let out a cry. The cry, while loud enough to draw the attention of the old monkey, had the odd effect of stilling the beast for a split, almost imperceptible second, which Sarutobi capitalized on as he finished his technique. The man used this ability to split the fox into 3 pieces, the yin half of its chakra, the yang half, and the soul. The man hoped that the extraction of the soul from the chakra would protect the children from the influence that the fox could attempt to exert from within in them. The caveat to this was the fact that the soul would still need to be contained, or it would simply join with one or both halves of the chakra, effectively making the split a moot point. With the last of his strength, the former Hokage placed the yang half of the fox's chakra into Menma and the yin half into Natsumi, as the younger two had less developed coils that would allow them to grow accustomed to it over time. This left Naruto to receive the fox's soul, since his coils at this point would have been too far along to handle the chakra. But the soul had its own power. It could overwhelm the babe and end his life. It could subjugate his soul and take over ... or, the most unlikely event, Naruto could survive the soul of the fox and suppress it within his body, but that would take an extremely powerful force of will, and that is something that would be unheard of in an infant. Though the third had, for some reason, faith that this baby was far more than he seemed and would be able to survive. And sorry, young one. This burden being thrust upon you and your siblings is unfair, but I'm sure you'll all be fine. The former Hokage looked into the blonde boy's curious eyes, a sense of guilt burgeoning in the pit of his stomach when the small human gave him an innocent smile before he was forced to place the demon's soul into him, tears coming from his eyes when the baby started to cry in what he assumed was pain. But when the third steeled himself and calmed, the baby had an odd reaction as the baby seemed homed in on the old man rather than himself. Before the man could contemplate this, he was met with his successor and his still weak wife standing before him. "Hiruzen, what did you do?" Minato asked, running to the old man and laying him on the ground. "Konoha needs you. Minato, an old man like me, can't keep up with everything happening. I was able to seal the Kyuubi into the children. They'll need you to teach them control, Kushina, and Mini Minato here contains the soul of the beast." The man coughed before continuing. "I've no idea what that could do to him. But he is special. These three will need you both to protect them from the mastermind of this attack and get them ready to face the world." And with that, Hiruzen Sarutobi died, not knowing the future that awaited the young blonde with his family and the grand adventure he'd set out on. A few days later, "Come again, Tsunade?" Minato asked in a hospital room where his wife was laying in a bed beside him, Menma and Natsumi in her arms, as they watched the renowned medical ninja, who had been called back thanks to the catastrophe that had occurred, run her hands over the baby Naruto. "It's like I said, this kid has the chakra necessary to live, but nothing else." Tsunade looked to the parents, who seemed flabbergasted at this news. "You can't be serious." Kushina was in disbelief. "I am. He isn't going to be anything special in the Ninja Corps. He most likely wouldn't make it through the academy without a special curriculum for the civilian level ninja. The only thing he's got going is the soul of Kyuubi in him, and even I can't understand how it was possible for a baby to overcome that. But it doesn't have any bearing on his skill," Tsunade explained, turning to the family. "How is he going to be the heir of the clan, then?" Kushina looked to her husband, seemingly disappointed at this revelation. "He won't, he can't." Minato frowned, looking to his other children. "With what is going to be happening in the future, we need the next generation of ninja to be the strongest yet. And with Menma and Natsumi becoming Jinchuriki, they have arguably the most potential of the future genin. That masked man will no doubt be coming back for the Kyuubi since he failed, not to mention staving off the boulder pirates that come through as well. Everyone needs to be able to step up, and having the eldest son of a well-known clan be unable to uphold and symbolize the will of fire and the strength that Konoha has won't be a morale booster." Minato sighed and looked at the sleeping baby by Tsunade. "So, what are you going to do?" Tsunade asked. "You plan on naming Menma the heir of the Uzumaki and Namikaze, and what'll you do with Naruto?" Tsunade crossed her arms with a raised eyebrow. "He can join the academy and try and make something of himself, but in the end, he'll hopefully throw in the towel rather than be an embarrassment." Minato stated, resolute in his choice. Looking to his wife, he saw her give a solemn nod in agreement. "If you think that's for the best," Tsunade handed the baby back to the mother. "And how do you plan on explaining the situation to the populace? They still want answers on what happened." "We decided to say that someone from Iwa was the culprit behind the attack. It would be understandable that they'd want some form of revenge on us for the war, and it's better than saying an unknown party had infiltrated the village and had managed to cause such destruction on his own." Kushina answered the question. Using the propaganda to sway the general public would cover up the real culprit and get them riled up to avenge their lost third Hokage and the myriad of lives lost because of the Fox's rampage. A tad underhanded, but it would ultimately get people in the proper mindset to improve themselves and fire them up to protect their village and way of life. "Very well then. Quite a task lays ahead of us, and I feel like I'll need more sake to get through it." Tsunade groaned while rubbing her temple. Later that day, the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, finally addressed the Konoha shinobi and citizens on the crisis that had unexpectedly befallen them. To say that the populace was outraged by the attack from Iwa that made them lose their previous leader was an understatement. But they were calmed in knowing that he had given his life to ensure that the attack would be a failure in the end. If not for the two infants housing the halves of the demonic beast's chakra, they would have been doomed. On the other hand, knowing that the beast essentially lived on within the Hokage's eldest didn't sit well with them. Having the demon possibly living among them as if its sins could be absolved by inhabiting the boy... It was wrong... and it would have to suffer for those transgressions. A young blonde was sent flying out of a ring by a punch from a now 8-year-old Menma. The younger brother sighed in disappointment at the heir of the Uzumaki clan and didn't regard his older brother in any meaningful way as the bruised blonde picked his up off the ground. "Great job again, Menma." Iruka wrote down the prodigy's score on the clipboard in his hand before moving down the list and giving the untalented sibling a 0 as was the norm in the academy. I don't even know why that loser keeps trying. Natsumi shook her head on the sidelines, her hair now in a ponytail as she watched through half-lidded eyes the blonde failure dusting himself off, yet still had a goofy smile on his face. Aw man, I almost got you this time. Naruto walked up to his siblings, seemingly not hearing the insult that his sister threw his way, but was stopped by a wall of people. Step off. You get any closer, dead last, and that stench will rub off on Natsumi-chan. A wild-looking boy snarled at the blonde, ready to get rough. You're so dirty, Naruto Baka. Menma-kun can't be near you. A pink-haired girl stood haughtily in front of the indifferent crimson-haired boy that made his way into the academy building with his sister and the rest of the entourage. Yeah, I guess you're right. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, trailing behind the large group of classmates since there was no opening to walk with his family. The blonde was used to this. He was normally ignored in class and left behind in every subject. The nickname Dead Last stemmed from the fact that he was consistently at the bottom of the class without ever moving up in status. His parents had tried to dissuade the blonde from joining the academy in order to save face, knowing that their eldest would be far from extraordinary, but even they were slightly shocked at the level of inept he was. Naruto couldn't pass any of the Konoha history tests, missed all targets in weapons practice, and hadn't won a single spar, though he was normally pitted against his brother or sister, which didn't do him any favors. Naruto truly was a failure as a ninja, yet the blonde still attended every class diligently and kept a smile on his face through the ridicule he endured. His classmates honestly wondered if the blonde was crazy with how optimistic he seemed despite the bleak future that would most likely meet him once the academy was finished. A lot had changed in Konoha during the siblings' formative years. For one, the academy now had the children train until the age of 18 to ensure they would be in their prime once they became genin, with the clan children practically guaranteed to rise quickly up the ranks. Not to mention that the academy was much more rigorous now, so the children would need to try all the harder to stay in the academy. Those that couldn't handle it had dropped out of their own volition. Our blonde had stayed even with his poor performance in the vain hope of improving. The reason for these changes. Officially, the Hokage told his forces that the execution of the Pirate King had caused an influx of rookie pirates, who were trying to make a name for themselves even though the elemental nations had a reputation, and South Blue being known for being unaffiliated with the world government and therefore had no marine presence. These pirates bit the bullet for a chance at fame. Unofficially, he was preparing Konoha for whatever the masked man could be planning, and when the time came for Konoha to become the dominant village on the island, deflecting the nefarious plan of the masked man seemed to fade further into the background, as there hadn't been hide nor hair of him since the attack 8 years ago. That's it for today. Class dismissed. Iruka released the students, watching as they all gravitated around the two Uzumaki Namikaze siblings, with the only exception being Menma's self-proclaimed rival Sasuke Uchiha, the sole survivor of the Uchiha clan massacre, and well-known brooder, didn't fraternize with any of his class, which was fine by him. The boy was consistently third place in the academy, infuriating him as he devoted himself wholly to training but couldn't surpass the Hokage's children. Outside the academy, the children were showering praise on the two top students. An impenetrable mob hung off every word they spoke, offering their 2 cents as little as it mattered to the two. Nan, Menma, you're amazing. Perfect scores again. This stuff is too easy. Mom and Dad's training is way harder than what we'd ever do here. Natsumi casually rebuffed the compliment. Academy training was basic as hell to them, but even their powerful father couldn't keep them from going through the proper channels to become genin. Figures, you troublesome redheads have the hero of the Third Shinobi War and the red-hot habanero training you. It's no wonder you'd think this stuff is easy, a pineapple-haired boy sighed. Maybe if you applied yourself a little more, Shikamaru, you could be as good as Menma-kun, or at least close to it. The platinum blonde girl rolled her eyes. Oh no, Menma-kun. Maybe you could help me ... with my taijutsu. A timid girl prodded her index fingers together. I'm having trouble. Sure, Hinata-chan. Anything for you, Menma answered the girl to the ire of the other girls. While this mob was chatting with the two siblings, the blonde brother was making his way out the door and took notice of the gathering. Seeing that he had no chance to make his way to see his family, the blonde settled for the only light in the village that cared for him, and it came in the form of a small wolf pup that ran up to him in greeting. Inu-chan. Naruto smiled, crouching to catch the small dog as it licked his face and making the blonde laugh. While an unoriginal name, seeing as the boy was young, the blonde cherished the small puppy as his only friend in the village. The blonde had been exploring the village late at night. Seeing as his parents were so focused on his brother and sister, they rarely noticed that Naruto wouldn't come home for days on end unless he needed a new set of clothing. On one particular night, the blonde came across the lost pup as it collapsed from exhaustion, and wounds most likely being attacked and losing its parents in the process. Naruto took the struggling pup in and had nursed him back to health, eventually letting it go when he could take care of himself. Unfortunately, the blonde met with some of the ornerier citizens of Konoha that would assault him occasionally, led by Iruka's assistant Mizuki a lot of the time. Being used to the harm, the blonde curled into a ball and took the abuse, never understanding the hatred or the words spewed from their mouths about him being the reincarnation of the Kyuubi. From Naruto's perspective, his siblings were the containers of the Kyuubi, so why was he targeted by the angry and bitter ninja and citizens of his home? Once they had their fill of beating the poor boy, he laid there waiting until the pain subsided enough so he could drag himself home. He never looked forward to those conversations with his parents, not after the first time. "Mommy, some sob people beat me up on the way home," the young Naruto cried to his mother. "Sigh, Naruto, crying isn't going to solve your problems." Kushin addressed the boy's wounds. "It just shows your weakness and means that they'll just come back and do it again." "Sob, so what do I do? Fight back ... or grit your teeth and bear it." Kushina finished patching up the boy, got up and looked indifferently to the boy. "And to make sure you learn, I won't be dressing any wounds from now on unless they're life-threatening." Since then the blonde had tried to heed his mother's words, but after failing to fight back he had come to fleeing whenever this happened or enduring the pain. And that night was one where he had to take the abuse. Luckily for him, the small puppy had sniffed him out and with surprising strength dragged him to its home, which, of course, was the well-known training ground 44 Aka, the Forest of Death, and that had become his camping spot whenever he didn't return home, which had become more frequent as the years went on. Since the rescue, the two couldn't be seen without the other being close by, as the pup would wait for the blonde outside of the academy every day. "No, I still failed today in Yu-chan, but I lasted a lot longer than normal in the spar." The boy spoke to the small animal as if it had asked him a question. "I think we should celebrate." The blonde boy cheered. The students all looked at the pitiful display with raised eyebrows or outright disgust, watching the blonde talk to himself to offset his loneliness. "What do you think we should have tonight?" Naruto asked the puppy as it tilted its head in mock thought and yipped. "No way, Inu-chan. I can't get a hold of that without money." Naruto ruffled the pup's head. "How sad can you get?" Natsumi groaned in embarrassment, raking her hand down her face and watched between her fingers as Menma pushed his way through the crowd to his brother. When the blonde managed to get a new off him, he took notice of his brother approaching and shot up straight. Naruto didn't really get to interact with his siblings outside of the occasional spar, since his parents would monopolize their time by teaching them to control the Kyuubi's chakra. Menma-kun, hey, what's up? Naruto was ecstatic, but his companion was less welcoming as Inu growled at the boy. The boy simply tisked at his sibling and looked down at the puppy with a dead stare, scaring the pup behind the blonde, but it didn't stop it from growling from behind Naruto. "You know, you really got me again that time." Naruto ignored the stare that his brother gave him as he rubbed the back of his head. "I don't think I'll ever be able to get you, but at least I lasted longer, right?" Naruto rambled on as he talked about how challenging the academy was for him. The blood-red-haired Uzumaki grit his teeth as his anger rose before reaching its boiling point. "Why are you still here?" Menma gripped the blonde's collar and got into his face. "All you've been doing is failing since getting here. You're dragging mom and dad's names through mud each time you show up." Menma pushed the blonde onto the dirt. "You'd do everyone a favor if you just disappeared, Naruto." I can't. I gotta become a ninja so mom and dad can be proud of me. I still have a chance to be a ninja, same as you guys," Naruto argued. "You've got no chance, Naruto. Mom and Dad have already told us that you aren't gonna be the clan heir," Natsumi said nonchalantly, revealing the news, but didn't seem to care since she was leaning against the wall with a side glance to her eldest brother. Naruto didn't seem shocked though, continuing to smile, if a tad more strained. With his head down and hair shadowing his eyes, the blonde boy thumbed his nose and looked back up. "I know, it isn't that hard to figure out. I can't do anything right. But I thought if I did better, then they'd care about me and what I did, like with you guys. You'll never be like us." Natsumi leaned her head against her fist and with no emotion in her voice, uncaring of the emotional pain she inflicted on her sibling. Naruto's eyes widened, and rather than say anything he ran out of the academy's clearing and into the village proper. Inu quickly followed him, hoping to comfort the boy. The assorted students weren't all that affected by the harsh words. The blonde was the dead last of the class and had shown time and again that he wasn't cut out for the harsh life of a shinobi, so it was for the best that he was made to give up. Naruto ran through the village with his head down, fighting back the tears that were threatening to come out as his mother's voice rang in his head. He rubbed at his eyes constantly to keep the wetness from spilling over, causing him to bump into someone. Well, seems the demon's gone and assaulted me. The citizen, clearly drunk, gripped the blonde by the shoulder and kicked the pup away when it attempted to bite him. I am sorry, Naruto muttered, clenching his eyes shut in preparation for whatever was in store. You'll be sorry, all right, you little brat. Hokage-sama will probably be happy that I got rid of a stain like you. The man made to bring a fist down, but it never came as he suddenly passed out, landing on the ground like a sack of dirt and foaming at the mouth. I don't think I've ever been to an island where a grown man would beat a child. A mysterious man with strawberry blonde hair and wearing small, round glasses and a cloak helped the young blonde up off the ground. Are you all right? Naruto could hardly believe his eyes. Someone had helped him ... and no one helped him. The boy looked at his savior in awe, believing him to be stronger than his dad, but that couldn't be possible. Looking to the unconscious man, Naruto was hard-pressed to disprove that idea, seeing as even his father had to hit someone to defeat them. The blonde was snapped out of his headspace by the waving hand of the mysterious traveler. Giving a smile, the blonde boy waved the man's concern off and put his hands behind his head. I'm fine. Thanks for the save though, Gramps. Naruto beamed at the man. Gramps, Rayleigh's sweat dropped. He wasn't that old, and here was this kid calling him Gramps. Shaki would have a field day if she were to find out about this ... Come to think of it, he'd been on his walkabout for quite a long time ... He was going to catch hell when he got back to Sabayani. Hey, Earth to Gramps, Naruto called, him and Inu watching the tall man stare into space. Oh, yes, what is it? Rayleigh asked the boy. I was asking you where you came from. I haven't seen you before, and normally people... Well, I haven't seen you before. Rayleigh caught the blonde's slip but chose not to pry, seeing as it wasn't his business. I'm just passing through. I won't be here for too long, and with the trouble I've caused, it'd be best if I left sooner rather than later. Rayleigh answered the curious boy and continued to walk down the main road with the blonde and puppy following him, while running in circles around him excitedly. I can help you out, Gramps, Naruto said with a finger pointed to himself and a smirk on his face. Really? He asked skeptically with a raised eyebrow and a smirk. Don't doubt the great Uzumaki Naruto. Me and Inu-chan can take you to a safe place where you don't have to worry about anyone coming to look for you as thanks for helping me out. Naruto then ran off without waiting for an answer, stopped a good distance away and looked back, bouncing on his feet. Come on, Gramps. The man chuckled good-naturedly and decided there was nothing to lose in humoring the boy. After all, it was either follow the young blonde to whatever haven he made for himself or shadily find a place to stay and pay off any hotel owner to keep his identity a secret. With that thought, the former pirate followed the young blonde, watching as the sunset rolled over to give way to the night. After a few minutes of walking, the duo and pup were met with the encompassing fence of the Forest of Death. Naruto ran to the fence and peeled the corner of it back, showing a makeshift entrance that the boy must have used extensively due to the quickness he displayed in finding the close to invisible secret entrance. Won't your parents be curious where you are? Rayleigh asked the excited blonde, who hesitated and rubbed the back of his head. No, it's fine. They won't worry about me. I stay out here all the time. I only go home when I need something, Naruto answered without looking back at the curious man. And they wouldn't want to know about you being attacked. No way. I'm tough, so they have nothing to worry about. Naruto Uzumaki is the toughest around. The boy then tripped mid-sentence, stubbing his toe on a root of one of the giant trees. My toe, he bawled. What was that about being tough? Rayleigh's sweat dropped. I just got surprised is all. Naruto defended himself, instantly drying up as if the accident hadn't happened, and the only evidence being the boy wiping his eyes. The former pirate raised his eyebrow at the unnatural speed at which the young boy had gotten over his fit, and continued to follow him to a small camp. It was nothing special, as it had some smaller branches from the tree propped up on each other for a tent with leaves on top to keep the moisture out in the event it rained. There was also a makeshift fire pit with sticks of varying sizes around it, most likely to cook any food the blonde managed to catch. Honestly, it made the retired pirate wonder why this boy was apparently living in a forest rife with hidden dangers and didn't simply return to his home, to his family, to live. And why weren't his parents around when he was about to be beaten by some drunk stranger? Lucky for you, I've still got some meat I managed to get from the butcher, and it's still good. Naruto started a fire while Inu dragged the meat to his side, and the blonde proceeded to stab each slab onto a cooking stick. Well, that's very kind of you. Rayleigh took a seat across from the blonde, noticing the giddiness the child had while he waited for the food to cook, Inu leaning against his side. You said that you're a traveler, Gramps? Naruto couldn't contain himself and asked his burning question. That's right. I doubt there's an ocean I haven't sailed on. That means you've been to the other blues. You must be a pretty strong guy, Gramps. Naruto's jaw dropped. I'm no one special. just trying to get in some sightseeing before settling down and retiring for good. Rayleigh held his tongue on his pirate status. If the boy found out about him being a pirate, he'd most likely shout to the heavens, and that would bring unnecessary danger to the island. Looking at the boy, Rayleigh did wonder something that he voiced. Why the interest? Well, the elemental nations are self-succulent, or something, so we don't interact with any other islands. There aren't even any of those seagull guys on the island cause we aren't part of that big team thing. So, I'd always been curious what it's like out there. I've even thought about traveling. 2. Naruto looked into the fire, its flames reflecting in his eyes. Maybe they'd care then. Rayleigh was in his own thoughts at the same time, a hand on his chin and eyes closed. I think I remember hearing about this island before during the voyage. An island filled with people with abilities that could give devil fruit users an honest fight. Powerful enough to resist the world government's hold as well. What a nice island I've found myself on. Rayleigh raked his hand through his hair with a wry smile. You meant to say self-sufficient. So, what are all the places you've been to, Gramps? Naruto brightened up again, practically demanding for stories of the man's travels within you barking in agreement. Why don't we hold off on that for now? Seems the food is done. Rayleigh laughed heartily as the blonde boy deflated, not knowing that the man was sparing him from knowing the truth for his safety. The two ate in silence, that is until the boy finished his food and started to talk about himself and what he liked to do with the former pirate politely listening. Rayleigh would chime in with little jabs at the blonde's expense now and then to the indignation of the young blonde, but the boy couldn't keep the smile from his face. He finally had someone to talk to, and he wasn't even from his island. Naruto was on cloud 9. If he could help it, he'd want the man to stay for as long as possible so he wouldn't be left alone again. Eventually, due to being young, the blonde turned in rather quickly, passing out unceremoniously on the forest floor from trying to stay awake to speak with the man. Rayleigh sighed with a smile, feeling worn out from the blonde's exuberance, watching the boy and puppy snoring on the ground for a small bit before he put them inside the shoddy tent. Once the two were comfortably sleeping inside the abode, Rayleigh took his flask out and stared into the sky contemplatively before glancing back to the blonde boy. It's their world now, right, Roger? Rayleigh saw that the boy was tossing and turning in his sleep, appearing to be in distress until Inu sidled up to him and got hugged tightly, which managed to calm the boy. Again, the former pirate was curious about what has happened to this boy on this island to make him this way but didn't think too hard on it, deciding to sleep for the night. I'm late. I stayed up way past my bedtime. Naruto panicked as he shot up, jolting the pup awake and only getting an opened eye from the man. Should you really be yelling this early? I gotta go, Gramps, but I'll be back later. The blonde ignored the man and went to rush back to the exit but stopped himself, turned back to Rayleigh, and jutted his hands out in the man's direction. Don't go anywhere. Rayleigh rose an eyebrow at the request. Hearing the desperation, he ultimately conceded with a sigh and a nod. I can't head out into the village anyway, so I might as well stay here. The smirked when blonde looked shocked and smiled brightly. Naruto then turned around and ran waving back to Rayleigh. I'll be back around late noon, Gramps, with a surprise for you. He charged out with Inu. That was how Naruto's morning started, and the boy was kind of surprised that for the first time ever he was going to be late to the academy. Since the blonde's goal was to be recognized by his parents and siblings, he made it a point to be on time every day, boasting the only perfect record in attendance in his class. He always either went home or to the forest after the academy, though the forest would always be where he ended up by night, trained to the point of exhaustion, and normally fell into his tent to sleep, repeating the process the next day. As hard a worker the boy was, he hadn't improved much if at all, but he threw himself into it all wholeheartedly. So why was he slowing down? Why did the bright smile he had vanish once he got far enough away from the forest of death? His steps slowed down to a stop, looking down to the ground, hurt in his eyes. He remembered the words that were hurled at him by his brother, how he was told that he'd never reach their level, never be the same as them, and his parents would never acknowledge him. Naruto shook his head, trying to dispel those dark thoughts. Menma and Natsumi couldn't have meant all those things. They were just giving him tough love, probably because his parents told them to encourage their older brother. That was it. Of course his family cared about him. How could he ever question that? Sure, he may not be the clan heir, but that doesn't mean he couldn't be useful in other ways. If he couldn't be a genin, then he could get some other job to support his family. The blonde finally made it to the academy's entrance and felt his heart pound in his chest. That awkward feeling of being the late student to class made the boy feel like a frog was in his throat as he opened the door and was met with Mizuki. Oh, Mizuki-sensei. Sorry, I'm late, I overslept. The boy got nervous, knowing the man's stance on him and standing out here on his own made him uncomfortable. And you also growled at the man's smug smirk as he lorded over the boy like some kind of deity. Naruto, I can't believe you'd blot you perfect attendance like this. The man played up disappointment. It happens. I didn't mean to oversleep. I just happened to stay up a bit later than normal. Naruto pleaded with the teacher, watching the cruel smile spread on the man's face. I couldn't possibly ignore such a blatant disregard for your learning. You need the most improvement of the entire class, but you'd play hooky rather than try and better yourself. Mizuki crouched down to look the boy in his eyes, a cruel glint shining within his own. I'm sorry, Naruto ... but you'll have to stay out here for the day. The boy was dumbfounded at this punishment, and before he could vocally announce his objection, Mizuki stopped him dead in his tracks. I don't want to do this to you, Naruto, but it's the only way you'll learn just how important education is ... It keeps you from becoming the dreg that the village thinks you are. Mizuki even sold the pity by tearing up as if it hurt him to do this to the boy. Trust me, Naruto, this is for your own good. The door was then slammed into the boy's face, unable to process what had just happened. He was shut out of school ... and forced to miss a day because he was late. It was his fault for staying out late welcoming Gramps and having that feast, by his standards, so he technically couldn't fault his sensei. Dejected, the boy went to the lone swing in the academy's courtyard and sat on it, thinking about the failure on his part. He'd have to try even harder to make sure this mistake never happened again. He owed it to his family to make them proud of him. The day went by relatively quickly for the boy as he forced himself to sit on the swing for the entire school day for punishment. He may have the freedom to leave, but he wouldn't learn from the mistake if he used this as a free day. And you tried to get him up to play so the boy could take his mind off things, but the boy refused. Once the flood of students made their way out of the building, the boy just rose his head and watched them filter out, smiles on their faces as they discussed the goings-on of the day. Praise being showered on his siblings as they all laughed together, blinding smiles on their face with boys congratulating men and girls fawning over his ability. Natsumi stayed to the side, the more introverted of the two, and politely accepted the attention that was sent her way with exasperated sighs as if she was above it all. It seemed that they were livelier than ever without him there, so Naruto thought it best to sneak out of the courtyard lest he spoils the fun. The blonde quietly removed himself from the crowd, his siblings easily noticing the boy but kept silent as they believed he had finally decided to quit to save their clan's face. Naruto walked through the main road of the village again, berating himself continually for allowing himself to be late like that. Naruto slapped his cheeks to snap himself out of his funk and yelled to the heavens, causing Inu to shoot up from the abrupt yell. I can't let this get me down. I'll just try 200 times harder. Naruto energized himself. Now, what am I gonna get for that surprise for Gramps? Naruto wondered. He noticed that last night that the man seemed to be hungry even after they had eaten, so the boy decided that today he'd get something really good for them to share. Luckily for the dirt poor blonde, the overstocked butcher that he normally acquired his food from had gotten rid of a large roast made from a specially ordered pig but hadn't sold it in the time frame he'd wanted, leading to it being chucked in its wrapping. Sure, it wasn't glamorous or anything, but it's how the blonde kept himself alive. Now, though, he was happy to snag a find like this since it would be the perfect thing to share with Rayleigh tonight. Gramps is sure gonna enjoy this, right, Inu-chan? Naruto asked the pup ... Then his eyes bulged out and his teeth sharpened when he saw the pup attempting to chew through the wrapping. And you little monster, stop trying to eat ahead of us. As the blonde tried to pull the pup from the roast, the two missed a group to the side hidden in the shadows approaching them. When Inu was finally pulled off the food, that's when the group appeared in front of the blonde, with Inu getting in front and started to yip at the men in a vain attempt at intimidation. Rayleigh was still situated in the forest, though there was some blood from various brave animals that had sensed his presence. He managed to frighten a few, but some were foolish enough to attack out of desperation and fear, so he put them down and moved the bodies out of eyesight. It was a nice way to kill time while waiting for the boy, at least. He looked up and noticed that it was getting late. Raising an eyebrow, the former first mate of the Pirate King got up from the ground. With furrowed brows, the man looked to the exit the boy used to get in and out of the dangerous territory and frowned to himself. Something isn't right, he muttered. He remembered the circumstances he found the boy in yesterday, and a slight chill went down his spine at the possibility that appeared in his mind. Rayleigh closed his eyes for a few mere seconds before opening them and rushing out of the forest. Rayleigh soon found the blonde in the middle of the dirt path, bloodied and beaten in the fetal position. Not too far from the boy's body was Inu ... and unlike the boy, the poor animal wasn't able to survive the brutal attack, most likely having taken the most damage while trying to protect Naruto. And with all this going on, bystanders were going about their day as if a child wasn't lying beaten in the middle of the road. Kid, hey kid, wake up. Rayleigh shook his shoulder, doing his best not to disturb him too much in case his injuries were too serious. Cough G Gramps. Naruto woke up, struggling to lift his head to look at the man but felt a jolt of pain at the movement. Hold still. I'll take you to the hospital. No. They won't help me. Then I'll take you home. Rayleigh went to grab the boy only to be stopped by a bloody hand gripping his arm. No, Naruto didn't even give a reason this time, but it was clear to the man that he didn't want to go home. It's my fault. I'm weak. Hearing this, Rayleigh went silent. I always get attacked like this and mom told me I had to fight back. When I tried it just got worse. Naruto started to break down as he finally revealed this to Rayleigh. She said that if I couldn't fight, then I had to take it. Cause I'm weak and can't defend myself. Rayleigh's eyes sharpened, reining in his anger, and was stopped cold hearing what the blonde said next. So, it's okay. I'm used to this, and as long as I don't cry, I'm still listening to my parents. Naruto smiled, trying to sit himself up. Rayleigh remembered back to the time the blonde had bawled from stubbing his toe on the tree root, and realized he used it as an excuse to cry. I wanted to surprise you with this, Gramps. Naruto brought his arms from behind him to show the roast. Me and Inu-chan wanted to eat this with you cause I could tell you were still hungry last night. Then those guys showed up and said I stole it. Inu-chan tried to protect me. Naruto looked down at the end, keeping his gaze from the pup's body. Naruto. How long has this been going on? Rayleigh asked seriously, calling the boy by his name. Since I've been 5. It's okay. Seriously. Rayleigh then gripped the boy's shoulders lightly to get him to stop. No. It isn't. No one should treat a child like this, no matter the reason. But mom and dad said, they're wrong, and they should be ashamed of themselves for telling you those things. Rayleigh grit his teeth. They have no right to be your parents. Naruto was left speechless, trying to find some way to defend his family's actions toward him. But found he couldn't. As an outcast, Naruto had a knack for being unseen and had witnessed many different people's interactions with those that they were close with and saw a warmth that he'd never experienced. His family treated him as a hindrance, one that stained the reputation that his parents had built for themselves because of his continued failings to the point they distanced his siblings from them. His weakness, to them, was a sin. An unforgivable one that reminded them of how worthless he was. Thinking on this, the blonde wanted to cry, but the instilled lesson of his mother kept him from doing so. That is, until Rayleigh embraced the boy. It isn't a weakness to cry. You're still young, so it's the way that you should cope when the world gets to be too much. Rayleigh looked ahead as he spoke. And you aren't weak, Naruto. The strongest people that I've known and in the whole world are those that can smile when the world stomps on them. Rayleigh didn't hesitate in his words, no uncertainty as he spoke. So, cry. Naruto allowed himself to finally cry, clutching the man's shirt as he let the years of abuse and neglect crash down on him. The pain of the beatings he suffered that he squashed down to appear stronger so his parents would care. The loneliness he felt from being ostracized by his sibling and classmates that would stab his heart every day he was subjected to it. And the loss of one of his only friends, Inu, because he couldn't stand up for himself. That maelstrom of emotions was felt from the boy vicariously by Rayleigh, who stood firm as the blonde let it out until his body couldn't continue and passed out. The man then took the boy back to his camp in the forest and used his cloak to bandage him to the best of his ability. When Naruto was comfortably in the tent, the roast he'd fought so hard for, cooking over a fire that Rayleigh made, and Inu was given a burial next to the tent. Rayleigh took his leave once more into the village proper, a stony expression on his face as he walked in the darkness towards a specific bar. Approaching the entrance, he heard the sounds of sick joy as 3 men, one being Mizuki, and one being the man that Rayleigh dealt with when he'd first arrived, sitting at the bar's counter bragging about attacking the demon. Rayleigh strode into the bar, all eyes going to the creaking door as he walked to the counter and stopped next to the 3 men. That'll teach that demon. The third man laughed boisterously with a wide smile, alcohol sloshing in the glass he held and a drunk flush to his face. Going around and stealing from hardworking citizens, and the nerve to assault us. The original assaulter roared in anger, his drink seen mostly around his lips. We did good work today, boys. That demon is finally getting the point. He's coming to terms with his existence. Mizuki took a sip of his drink, letting out a satisfied sigh. He was late to the academy today, and he didn't interact with any of the students after class let out. He knows he's alone in the world. You're the men that beat him. Rayleigh turned to them with a disarming smile. Yeah. You knew or something. Feel like I've seen you before? The original thug put a hand to his chin. Rayleigh knocked his knuckles against the counter to call over the bartender. I'd like to buy these men a drink. The men were shocked that this man would buy them more drinks since he didn't know them. The bartender went to get the drinks at the former pirate's behest, especially because the man overpaid for them by a large margin, not knowing the real reason why the man had overpaid. With the drinks in front of them, the men drank, all the while still eyeing the mysterious newcomer. Thanks for the drinks, but why do that? Mizuki, as a shinobi, was suspicious. Just wanted to let you three have your last drink. Rayleigh smiled, finishing the drink he had gotten with his calm smile still present all while the men looked at him. Before I kill you. That statement made the three surround the calm Rayleigh, weapons at the ready and anger present in their eyes. The patrons all looked to the commotion but soon returned to their drinks, believing the older man to be outmatched by the three attackers. You're new here, so I'll give you a warning. That thing you're trying to defend is a monster, Mizuki said to the man, who was still calmly sitting without a care. Rayleigh then looked to the men and comfortably said, I've been around for a while. I've sailed along most of the world ... and I've seen real monsters, some friends and some enemies. Suddenly an intense pressure was felt in the bar, making everyone inexplicably pass out except for the three men, who hit the floor on their knees. You're the one that stopped me the other day. The first thug grits out, sweat pouring down his forehead. Nice to see you remember. Rayleigh stood above the men as they looked terrified since they were at his mercy. You call that boy a monster, and yet I've only seen a child being dealt abuse and ostracization. Through all that hardship he's been dealt with, he still has the strength to smile and felt no malice towards anyone ... He thought it was his fault. Rayleigh crouched down to meet their eyes and asked, so tell me who the monster is again. The men were frightened on a level they thought couldn't be reached, staring into the eyes of Rayleigh, and felt that they were gazing upon an entity that could challenge their hawkage, perhaps even above him. It's easy ... for an outsider to talk about matters they know nothing about. Mizuki growled out, glaring at the man, and grew surprised when Rayleigh outright laughed in his face. You're right, I was comfortable just passing through and not getting involved in the day-to-day of this island. But that little kid endeared himself to me, so I couldn't help but get attached ... and I'd do anything for my friends. At end of that sentence the pressure let up on the three. Picking themselves up, the men backed away, unsure what to do as they stared down the man that said he'd be killing them. Rayleigh stood in front of them, a lazy look on his face as he brought a hand up, waving it in a come-on motion. I'm not a cold-blooded murderer, so I'm going to give you a fighting chance. That way you won't have any regrets when it ends. Rayleigh smiled. Once he finished his sentence, he quickly caught the large shuriken that Mizuki had thrown from his back using only his thumb and index finger before breaking it between them. The men were stunned, watching the pieces of the ninja weapon fall to the floor, the man responsible still smiling as if it was a simple feat for him. This act made the men truly realize how outclassed they were, grasping at straws to survive as the two thugs begged to be spared when Mizuki shakily walked forward. I'm part of this village's military. You won't get away with killing me, and you'll have the entire village looking for you after this slight against an asset. And who exactly will be able to identify me? Rayleigh countered, pointing a finger to the unconscious crowd that littered the floor. Only cowards hide behind their faction. It shows they can't stand on their own. You have to live with the consequences that your actions have led to and fight for your right to have caused them. Rayleigh cracked his knuckles, ready to end these men. The next day, Naruto shot up. A quick pain shot up his shoulder from the movement and a hand going over his bandaged eye. Remembering the events from last night, Naruto scrambled out of the tent and saw Rayleigh in front of the fire. The man looked up to see the boy and smiled, watching Naruto sit across from him. It's about time you woke up. He reached behind him, pulling a stick with a large piece of the roast stabbed on it and handed it to the boy. You said that you wanted to eat together, and you make me wait a whole day. I'm getting on in years. I need nutrients at every chance I get, Rayleigh joked, grabbing his stick. Naruto didn't know what to say. What could he say? What had happened yesterday was an awakening for the boy. He realized his place in the village for the first time ... and it hurt. He opened his mouth, wanting to talk about what had happened. Yes, it all happened. Rayleigh answered the question before it could be asked and stopped the boy again as he went to speak. But you shouldn't dwell on it. It wasn't your fault it happened. If anyone is to blame, it's the people ... and those people specifically. You mean ... my family. No, a family supports each other. Allowing that abuse to happen to you for years on end ... They renounced any claim they could have to be your family. Rayleigh told the boy in all seriousness. Naruto looked down, letting the truth sink in before raising his head. What should I do now? He seemed lost. You said you wanted to travel, right? Why not do that? Rayleigh offered. I kinda wanted to do that so they'd care about me. I dunno what I'd do if I went out there ... and I'm just a kid. Naruto then had a proverbial light bulb moment. You could take me with you, Gramps. Naruto was ecstatic. Rayleigh raised a hand to stop the celebration before it could truly start. Sorry, but I'm gonna have to stop that. I have to tell you the truth. Rayleigh saw the boy look at him with hurt that he was lied to, and with his track record in the village that didn't sit well with him. I'm not just a traveler, kid. I'm a pirate, or at least I was. A pirate? I thought they were supposed to be liars, plunderers, and thieves. You aren't like that at all. And villagers are supposed to be close-knit and care about each other, Rayleigh shot back. There are all types of people in the world. Some pirates are the textbook definition that the world has given them, and some are just people out for adventure. Rayleigh recalled the pirates he'd met on his journey. So, you can't take me with you 'cause you're still being hunted. Not really, but I wouldn't be surprised either. I was pretty notorious, so taking you with me is off the table. Then what if I go out on my own later? Naruto was grasping at straws. I don't want to stay here anymore. I'd rather be anywhere but here. It will be dangerous out there. You may have the heart, but you do lack the physical strength. And you're still a little crybaby, Rayleigh laughed. Then I'll get stronger. If it means I can leave, then I'll do anything no matter how long it takes. And what will you do when you leave? Rayleigh asked. What should I do, Gramps? Naruto was lost. I can't tell you, he laughed. You could just leave this island and find a new one where no one would know who you are, and get a fresh start. Join the Marines and fight injustice across the sea, if you want, or become a pirate and sail the sea for adventure. But no one will look favorably on that unless they know you, Rayleigh explained. But if I was a Marine, I'd have to chase you, Gramps. Naruto was horrified at the idea. Why would you want me to do that? I'm not steering you in any direction. You should never regret a decision you make, so I wanted to give you all your options. As long as you're happy with your choice, then it doesn't matter what I think. If I was a Marine, I'd have to follow orders and all that stuff. I've had enough of that here. Naruto didn't have any interest in that, having been underfoot of superiors his entire life. I'd rather be a pirate. Then no one could mess with me, and I'd get to see the world. Naruto sounded excited at the prospect. Remember, that'd make you a criminal. The world won't accept you, and you'll be on an island isolated from people simply because of that. I don't care, 'cause pirates are supposed to have crews, right? Rayleigh smiled. Yes, traversing the world on your own when the world itself will be your enemy necessitates allies. My crew is made up of people that could watch each other's backs and make up for weaknesses, Rayleigh pointed out. Then I'll get the best crew any ocean's ever seen, Naruto affirmed. And what will you be looking for? Rayleigh asked. Seeing the dim look cross the blonde's eyes, he chuckled. For a pirate, traveling island to island with no clear destination or goal is a good way to get stagnant or be captured. A goal would make you focus. You could be like a lot of pirates today and go after the title of Pirate King, Rayleigh offered, wondering what the blonde would do. Pirate King? What's that? Right, you don't really know much about the outside. Put simply, the Pirate King is the person that conquers the stretch of ocean known as the Grand Line, claiming everything the world has to offer in terms of power, wealth, and status, Rayleigh explained in layman's terms. I don't really care for stuff like that. But if I am gonna be a pirate, then I want my goal to be an answer. Naruto got deadly serious as he spoke. An answer? The blonde nodded slowly. Yeah, I want the answer to a question. I'll set out to sea to find out that answer. I need to know if it even exists, Naruto affirmed. What question do you need answered? Rayleigh rubbed his chin in curiosity. Naruto then told the former pirate what his question was, and the man laughed lightly at what he was told. Getting away from here is the best option if that's what you need answered. And it seems to me like you'll need all the help you can get, Rayleigh subtly offered the blonde. You'll help me out, Gramps? Naruto grew excited. Well, I can't very well let you go off half-cocked in a few years just for you to die before you get what you want, so I'll train you until I have to leave. The village is probably going to be looking for me. Thanks, Gramps. I'll be the best student you could ask for. If that's so, why not lay off the Gramps stuff? Just call me Sensei. Rayleigh stroked his beard and his ego, then donned a contemplative look. Maybe it'd be better to be Rayleigh Sensei. When do we start, Gramps Sensei? Naruto asked, not paying attention to the deadpan look he received from the man. As soon as you're well enough to move. Could you at least try to call me Sensei? Rayleigh slightly pleaded, but it was drowned out by the cheerful shouts of the boy. In the village, the bar that Rayleigh visited was a war zone. The floor was splintered and slightly caved in as if something of great weight had come through. All the bottles of alcohol were shattered, with their contents being strewn all over the floor. The most horrific thing on the scene, though, were the 3 dead bodies inside. The original thug's face was put through a wall, his skull caved in upon impact with shards going into his brain. The other's chest had practically exploded out of his back. Chest cavity completely on display, with the insides not too far behind the fallen body. The man's face a rictus of terror, as if he didn't realize the deed had been done before fading. Mizuki ... he had the worst of it. for his blood was splashed all around the bar, and from the evidence, this was done with such brutal precision it was certain the man had been alive for every moment until finally being beheaded to end his torment. And you say you have no recollection of the person who did this? Minato asked the bartender, a grim expression set on his face. He wasn't all that concerned with the dead patrons, more he was upset that some unknown had slipped its way into his village and caused a commotion while he was none the wiser. It's almost like this intruder thought he was a fool. Nothing, Hokage-sama. There was one older gentleman that had come into the bar, but he could never have taken on those three by himself. The bartender started to sweat when the stare of his leader fell on him. He was most likely the culprit then. Looks can be deceiving, and that can be the perfect weapon on those that are prone to overlooking. Minato failed to realize the hypocrisy of that statement. Sensei, if this person had caused this much destruction, then there's no way he'd remain here. It would be foolish, Kakashi spoke up from behind. True. What a nuisance. Minato sighed and looked to the dead bodies. Those two won't be missed, and Mizuki was never a true boon to the shinobi program, so it's no heavy loss. Minato didn't regard the dead men as worth anything. Turning to leave the bar, clean this mess up, and do not speak of what was talked about here. No need to rile the citizens when the danger has already passed, and we shall pay for your silence as well, barkeep. With that, Minato and his former student left the wrecked bar. So, Sensei, how is Menma and Natsumi's training going? Kakashi eyes smiled to the man. Very well. They remind me in Kushina of ourselves with each passing day. I've no doubt that they'll be able to lead this next generation into outperforming the previous. Minato smiled. Whistles, that is some great praise, Sensei. I've overheard Iruka talking about them in class. According to him, they're practically the leaders already. Of course, they come from great stock after all, Minato boasted, but the joy was killed at Kakashi's next words. What of the other one? Naruto. Kakashi flinched at the shift in his sensei's demeanor at the mere mention of the firstborn. What of him? He has had every chance to prove that he's a prodigy like Menma and Natsumi, but he has constantly disappointed. They come home and talk about the mess he makes of himself in class. It's an embarrassment to our legacy. Minato pinches the bridge of his nose to rein in his anger. I'm glad that he makes himself scarce around the village, as I feel I'd strike him if given the chance. Menma told me that he'd even refrained from attending the academy the other day, so I hope he's come to his senses and given up. Minato smiled, a cruel glint in his eyes. I understand, Sensei. Ridding yourself of a blot must come as such a relief, Kakashi thought to his failure of a father. He was much happier with Minato filling that role in his life. He isn't removed just yet. Minato stopped walking and turned to his former student. As you know, Naruto isn't going to be the clan heir. He received a nod from the copy nin. Kushina and I have talked, and we've decided to go a step farther, to truly remove that stain from our person. We are going to disown him once he comes of age. This way we can make the official announcement of Menma becoming heir, and any dissent will be silenced because we gave the boy all the time to improve and keep his position as a family member, Minato reasoned, adamant with the decision he and his wife came to. It's for the best, Sensei. He'll have a much more fulfilling life being at the bottom, as that is where some are just destined to be. Kakashi bowed slightly to his sensei and took his leave. This was the starting point for the story of a boy who was born under an unlucky star and deemed a failure by his family. A boy that survived on his own for much of his early life, before meeting the one man that could help him by complete chance. In the future, that boy will make a name for himself in the world at large, and his family will come to regret the choices they had made towards him. The story of Silver's D. Naruto has begun. Cover: Naruto stands with a captain's coat draped across his shoulders and sailing across the ocean, standing with a leg up on a dinghy's bow, and a confident smirk on his face, missing the fact that the ship was mostly reduced to flotsam by a grinning shark with wood from the ship sticking out of its mouth. Alright, since we're starting you from scratch, I'd say 2 years of hard training will get you to an acceptable level. Rayleigh walked with Naruto through the forest of death. The young blonde trailed behind the former pirate with a woven basket on his back, filled with stones. According to Rayleigh, this would be his strength training, and the beginner level at that. Once he'd gotten used to the stones, they'd work on building some muscle tone. Then the combat training would begin. The impatient blonde wanted to dive headfirst into the combat training and was met with a smile from the pirate. Rayleigh allowed the boy to have one spar with him just to serve as an example, and Naruto was trounced in seconds. He woke in a few hours with no recollection of the man moving before he'd gone unconscious, giving him a good measure of their gap in strength. Only 2 years. Naruto strained out, unable to lift his head to look at the man. Each step exhausted the blonde. Sweat poured down his forehead and his teeth were grit. The training was no walk in the park, Gramps made sure of that. but he was determined to get stronger. Yes, if anything, I'm giving you too much time. The longer I stay, the worse off the both of us will be. 2 years is a good amount of time, and as I said, you'll be at an acceptable level, Rayleigh explained to the boy. If you say so, Gramps, Naruto grunted but grew a small smile on his face from a thought. I can't wait, he whispered to himself. For what? Setting out? Rayleigh rose an eyebrow. Well, not just that. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and quickly put his hand back on the basket strap lest he loses his balance. I was thinking how great it'd be to get stronger and beat up Menma, Naruto admitted. I want to stop you right there. Rayleigh stopped, turning to look at the blonde. He crouched down to eye level and spoke seriously. I know you want to get back at them for everything ... but getting stronger for revenge isn't what I'm training you for. I know that ... but shouldn't they pay for all that stuff they did? Naruto was confused. If you were strong, you got to do anything you wanted. Right? That's them shining through you. I have no doubt that they'd try to get back at you for defeating them, and that would just lead to them trying to find you here ... and therefore me, Rayleigh explained. But dedicating your existence to revenge will only lead to pain. I want you to promise me that you won't be showing off what you learn here. Keep yourself under the radar. That way they won't be watching you and wondering what's been changing. Rayleigh stuck his finger in front of his face while looking the boy directly in the eyes. I promise, Gramps. Naruto looked slightly depressed. But from the look in Rayleigh's eyes ... he just didn't want to disappoint the only family he had. Don't look so down. I never said you couldn't fight them. I just said don't dedicate this training for that act. Rayleigh placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. This is to get you ready for that harsh world out there. Gramps, Naruto started tearing up, until no crew would want such a crybaby for a captain, so I've gotta toughen you up. Sigh for their sakes at the very least. Rayleigh shook his head with his eyes closed. Damn it, Gramps, I'm gonna sock you. Naruto shed the basket so he could jump at the man, only for an impromptu game of tag to ensue. Both had smiles on their faces, even if the boy tried to keep an air of anger about him. After training for those 2 years, Rayleigh took his leave of the Leaf Village, making the blonde promise him that he would keep training himself without the pirate mentor. Rayleigh also told the blonde to set out in 8 years' time, knowing from the boy's info that his class would be graduating when he turned 18. A perfect time for him to disappear since he wouldn't be entering the shinobi force. The final parting gift being an odd piece of paper that bore Rayleigh's name, the pirate telling Naruto to keep it on his person. It was a tearful farewell, with the blonde bawling his eyes out as he was left alone in a physical sense, but knew he wasn't alone in the world, promising Rayleigh that he'd meet him again once he'd made it into the Grand Line. And thus, our story begins 8 years later. The older Naruto woke up from the renovated tent he'd made throughout the arduous training he'd had 8 years ago. It now was made up of the forest's trees after he'd trimmed them down to a more manageable level. He stretched, sticking his arms upward to get the kinks out of his back and giving a yawn. Walking out of his abode, he dropped to a sitting position in front of a fire he'd left burning the night prior. Rubbing crust out of his eyes, Naruto reached to his left and grabbed a much larger stick than he'd had as a boy. The utensil was now tied into a bundle of sticks so it could support the surprisingly large animal the blonde had defeated. A giant boar was stuck on the end of the object and had become a healthy red from being cooked throughout the night. The blonde's mouth watered at the magnificent sight and dug in. In only a few short minutes the poor animal was stripped to the bone, with the blonde teen laying on the ground and his stomach quickly digesting the food he'd eaten. Looking up to the sky, Naruto smiled, knowing what day it was and what awaited him. The last day of the academy, a day he'd dreamed of a lot as a young boy, and now awaited its end for completely different reasons as a teen. Standing up from his position, Naruto walked to his tent and knocked it down. He wouldn't be coming back here anytime soon. He then walked to Inu's grave, a small smile on his face, kneeling to place a hand on the dirt above where the body was buried. I'm going now, Inu-chan. Naruto's smile got smaller as he continued. I don't know when I'll be back ... or if I'll even come back here. But I'd never leave without saying goodbye. Naruto clutched the dirt, keeping his emotions in check. I wanted to thank you for being at my side and for protecting me back then. And what better way than getting out of here and being free and happy? Naruto stood up, the dirt still in hand, before opening his hand so a small gust of wind could carry it from his palm. I'll become a great pirate, Inu ... one that will shake the world. That way there's no one who hasn't heard of me. With that affirmation, Naruto strode out of the forest, grabbing his old jacket that has torn from his growth and throwing it on. Leaving behind the home he'd made for himself, ironically welcomed in the harsh environment that made many ninja tremble in fear, and moved forward toward his goal, a place that had helped him grow in ways that he used to believe could only be achieved through the academy and his family. Once out of the forest, Naruto took a great leap forward with a fist in the air, landed, and then started to run to the academy. In the deeper reaches of the forest of death, one would find trees with deep gashes in them. Some others had fist marks marring their trunks, the marks being much larger than the blonde teen's. Large trenches ran across the ground, running jaggedly, and some meeting trees only continue upward. If any were to see these destructive markings, they would know that no animal from Konoha could cause them. Simply put, it would have had to come from a person. Inside the academy, all of the now 18-year-old genin hopefuls were seated, ready to take their final exams and become a part of the shinobi force. All of these students were the best of the best, capable of withstanding the grueling training that the curriculum put them through, and became better for it. They all grew exponentially from the children they had been. Iruka couldn't be prouder. This class was shaping up to be the best that Konoha had ever produced. The only caveat, Naruto. The blonde teen was still at the bottom of the class, yet still attended each one. The difference was that ever since the incident that had resulted in Mizuki and 2 other citizens dying, Naruto hadn't paid as rapt attention to the lessons as he used to. He would normally sit quietly in his seat, content with the invisibility he had in class because of his status, and would doodle on scrap paper during lessons. Iruka had caught a glimpse of the doodles, wondering what had the blonde's attention, only to see different skulls drawn on it. The only aspect that the blonde kept his undivided attention on would be the combat. Despite the blonde not being seen trading, he had gained muscle through the years to the point that he was the most defined of all the teenagers now, having muscles that weren't overly pronounced but were clear that he was no pushover with an emphasis on speed. His siblings, while having muscle, were made to use their agility and knowledge to outdo their physical betters, especially since they had their own trump cards. Naruto, even with this increase in muscle, would still lose to his brother in their spars, but would come away with less damage than he used to and leave the academy going who knows where to repeat the process the next day. Iruka had no idea why he kept returning, or why he even bothered to come to the final exams, but the Chunin was glad that the blonde would be out of his hair after today. Welcome, everyone, to your last day as students. I have no doubt in my mind that most of you will be getting your headbands today and will be allowed to carry the symbol of our village. Iruka spoke, eyeing the sleeping Naruto when he said most. After today, you will be adults in the eyes of the ninja world, able to take missions and be in charge of espionage ... and taking lives in the name of Konoha. The students all nodded seriously at these words, knowing what would be required of them in the coming years. They would become the vanguard for their village, in charge of protecting the people and the interests of their home. Putting this above all else, becoming a shinobi meant being ready to die for their village, whether from risking lives for information, putting them in danger, or even abandoning allies if it meant a greater boon for Konoha. We'll begin with the written test. Iruka walked throughout the room, a smile on his face as he passed the test to each of his students. Coming to Naruto, Iruka shook his head and placed the paper onto the desk and nudged the blonde awake. Rubbing his eyes, Naruto saw the back of Iruka as the man walked to his desk to observe the students. The blonde looked down to see the test, grabbed his pencil ... and immediately started doodling. He'd been spending the boring moments in class conceptualizing the Jolly Roger he'd want to have to represent his crew when he became a pirate, and he was sure that he'd finally come up with its final design. A big smile on his face, Naruto doodled away on the paper. It didn't matter if he filled the paper out or not. His string of failures in the academy guaranteed that he would fail even if he got 100% on each section of the final. So why bother with something, knowing that he wouldn't be staying here after today anyway? He was here for one specific thing, and that came at the end of the exam. The others stared at the smiling blonde, frowns on their faces, and feeling insulted that this fool was still sitting in his chair, pretending that he was one of them. He should have been kicked out of the academy, but that was only possible if the student dropped out themselves, so they could have every chance to become better. If only Naruto had gotten that information. In only an hour, the written portion of the final had been completed and the teens passed their finished papers to the scar-faced Chunin. The outlier was, of course, Naruto, who had kept his paper, observing it with a wide smile and pocketing it. The next part of the exam was the ninjutsu portion. This was a section that Naruto would sit out of because he'd never been able to use chakra in any substantial way. He was told that he only had enough to live, so he couldn't do any of the flashy moves that shinobi were known for, meaning that he had a free pass for this portion. Everyone had passed the ninjutsu section, smiles on their face as they gathered around the wall that those that had finished leaned against. Naruto was separate from them, keeping his mind focused on what would be coming next in the exam and eyeing his younger brother in his periphery. The combat portion, moving outside, the teens gathered around the sparring ring, giddy as their hard work was about to pay off. They could practically feel their headbands in their hands, they were so close. The rules were simple: fight seriously, no chakra allowed, and your performance was what was being graded, not whether you win or lose the fight. A test that they had drilled into their heads for years to improve hand-to-hand combat in the former children and build up unique styles for the civilians who were at a disadvantage compared to the clan styles. With little fanfare, the battles had begun and been indicative of the improvements that had been reached by everyone. There was a good mix of brawlers that relied on instinct and force to overpower their opponents, and those that used their superior minds to outmaneuver and predict the opponent's moves to wear them down to an equal level. Now came the event that would end the exams, a fight that had been seen many times by all those present. Naruto versus Menma, a fight that's outcome was clear in the minds of all present, given the crimson-haired teen was arguably the best in taijutsu, and could end this fight in seconds with nary a hair out of place. Too bad they were going to be pleasantly surprised at the outcome of the spar this time. Time for the final spar of the exam. Menma versus Naruto. Iruka sighed with his eyes closed. What a way to end this class's stay at the academy. Another lackluster bout between the two brothers with the outcome decided before it began. Alright, just what I've been waiting for. Naruto pumped his fist in the air and rushed to the center of the ring. Why is he so excited to lose? Were the mutterings of the students, looking on with raised brows and sweat drops while watching the blonde bounce on the balls of his feet. Come on, let's go, let's go. Naruto had a bright smile on his face so wide that his teeth were blinding, and his eyes closed. In a hurry to get beat again, Menma rose from his sitting position, a stern look on his face as he disdainfully regarded his brother while making his way into the ring. Nah, just excited to finally go all out. Naruto smashed his fists together, smile going to a smirk, and his eyes set in determination. All out. And what would that look like? Menma looked condescendingly at the teen as they both got into ready stances. Naruto cracked his knuckles and looked his brother in the eyes. Come find out, he challenged. Hajime. Iruka brought his hand down, beginning the fight. Menma kicked it off by rushing the blonde, quickly getting into Naruto's stance and bringing a fist toward his face, only to have the teen catch the fist a short distance from his face. The impact resounded in the silent field. Mouths dropped in astonishment when the dead last caught the top student's punch. Eyes were wide in disbelief, and none were wider than the offender's as he wrested his hand from the blonde's grip. He caught it. He's never kept up with me in any of our spars ... and now he's catching my punches. Menma grit his teeth in anger. Naruto wasn't paying any attention to his opponent's dilemma, preferring to open and close his hand while staring at the palm. A smile grew on his face, making a fist and looking back to his brother. Whoa, even I'm kinda shocked I did that. You were moving really slow, Naruto pointed out, inadvertently angering the Uzumaki. Slow. Menma ran into a kick, bringing his leg up to swing his heel into the side of Naruto's head. This was met with Naruto's kick meeting his in a stalemate, and angering Menma further in the process. This led to a flurry of attacks being launched by the incensed Uzumaki heir, that was dodged swiftly by Naruto, who kept a calm smile on his face while doing it. Fight back. No failure is going to beat me. I'm the heir of the Uzumaki clan. Menma lost his cool. Naruto hopped back, gaining distance from his brother and cleaned his ear with a nonchalant expression. Menma, keep your head screwed on straight. You're letting your emotions get the better of you. Natsumi spoke from the crowd, leaning against the wall with a straight face while she observed the spar. Keep your comments to yourself. Natsumi, this Nat thinks he's hot shit cause he gained some muscle, but he's still the same loser as before. Menma disregarded the advice, veins bulging on his brow. Man, you guys sure have gotten different after all these years. I'm glad I haven't been living in that house. Naruto looked away from Menma with his head turned over his shoulder. What's that supposed to mean? Menma took offense to that. Everyone wished that they could be trained by the greatest Hokage in Konoha history, and the best kunoichi like he and Natsumi had. I mean, I'm glad I could grow up to be a person. Naruto insulted the siblings and their upbringing ... all while picking his nose. This little bastard. Menma raged to the point that the Kyuubi's chakra began to leak out of him. Menma-kun, stop. Iruka went to stop the match but was stopped by the cold glare of Natsumi. Iruka, surely you aren't going to allow an insult to be thrown at the progeny of your leader. That is tantamount to insulting our father himself. A punishment for verbal assault is well within our rights. Natsumi's eyes were set on the blonde, no emotion on her face as she watched her brother use the demonic chakra he contained. While the more emotional of the two, Menma wouldn't lose control of the Kyuubi that easily. This was merely a response from his pride in their blood that Naruto shared with them, unfortunately, yet still would disrespect it. He needed to be reminded of the hierarchy. Surprisingly, Naruto got more excited when seeing Menma start using the demon's chakra in their fight and got back into his stance. His smile wide and eyes narrowed, ready for the attack that he knew would be coming at near blinding speed. The thing he wanted to do above all else was have a chance to fight Menma at his best. And do one simple thing. Menma moved so swiftly that the tiles of the ring broke from his foot, kicking off them, his right arm coming to his side and his hand in a clawing motion with the red chakra gathering over his appendage. Naruto met Menma's rush with one of his own, feral smirk still in place, bringing up his right arm to go for a punch that seemed normal to the human eye. Running to meet his younger brother, Naruto was ready for the clash. Both brought their arms up, fully intent on ending the battle with their respective attacks, and both were able to perceive the other's attack before it was made, making them shift their heads away from the attack. Fist and claw barely skirted by their respective targets. The caustic chakra of the Kyuubi slightly burned the cheek of Naruto, and the blonde's fist was completely dodged by Menma. Naruto smiling, eyes looking directly into Menma's blue orbs that were slit and rage-filled. Then filled with shock. Menma's face bent inward from the cheek, the same side that the fist of his older brother had passed. What? I avoided it. Menma looked to his opponent, only able to see the smirk on the blonde's face as whose eyes were covered by his hair from Menma's perspective. Skidding back from the impact of whatever had hit him, Menma raised a hand to his cheek once he'd stopped. When his hand brushed his cheek, Menma felt the slight sting of pain that the hit had caused and raised his head, ready to get back in the fight and show this failure the error he had made. Winner, Menma. Iruka's shout stopped Menma in his tracks. Looking across the ring, he saw Naruto outside the ring sitting cross-legged and laughing boisterously with his hands on his knees. Welp, lost again. But at least I lasted the longest I ever had, right? Naruto brushed his pants off, a knowing smile on his face when he looked at Menma's shocked expression. Just failed again. I missed, and he threw the match. He let me win. Why? Menma ground his teeth, ignoring his gathering peers. I guess even a loser can get lucky. He managed to nick you. Natsumi leaned over, her ponytail hiding her face as she whispered to him, what happened? You missed. I know. But he still threw the match. Does he think he can get away with that? Menma made to go after Naruto, but Natsumi put a stop to it. Why take it so personally? He's still nothing. And after today everyone will know it. Natsumi gave a cruel smirk. The type to enjoy indirect cruelties than instantaneous gratification. I still think he deserves more. Menma looked at the blonde's back, ultimately conceding to his sister. It would be gratifying to see the fool's face when his father gave the news today. Back inside, the students were gradually called up to the front desk where Iruka handed them their official Konoha headbands. The proud smile on his face as each student that he brought up gave a wide range of emotions from happy to relief and more than a few tears of joy. This made the teacher feel like his time was worthwhile and had a hand, however slight, in bringing up the next generation of shinobi. He looked to the only failure of the group and couldn't feel more upset that his time had been wasted because the blonde had zero aptitude for the shinobi arts. Naruto was the only blemish on what could be considered the perfect class in Iruka's mind and could only imagine the pain that this boil had caused his Hokage's family. Finishing his thoughts and giving the last headband, Iruka stood at his desk to address the newly made genin in his class. With this, you all are now genin of the Hidden Leaf, he announced, and waited for the slight cheers and claps to continue. I'm proud of each and every one of you. You've all come far since you were children and have earned your place amongst our military. Iruka ran his eyes over the classroom. He saw the many faces of his now adult students. The once unsure and fearful children were hardened and ready for the dangers that the world would throw their way. Naruto had his feet kicked up and lazily paid attention to the man's speech, inflating the egos of the overconfident students since Iruka was the type that liked to be hands-on with learning and give answers directly rather than have them find out on their own. And their parents did much the same by handing them their training on a platter. He knew the man wasn't talking to him specifically, but Iruka's next words did apply to everyone present in the room. All of your futures are bright, and I know that you will become great, that will have their names known far and wide. Iruka, unknowing of the double meaning for a specific student of his, gave one final smile as their sensei. This will be your one day of freedom. You will be returning here tomorrow for team formations and will meet your Jonin sensei on that same day. With that said, congratulations on graduating the academy, Iruka shouted. A chorus of cheers was heard ringing in the room, a few smirks from the more subdued genin. Two sets of eyes were zeroed in on the blonde as he stood up, not taking part in the outcry, and chose to leave without drawing too much attention from the rest. Looking at each other, the two siblings stood as well to make an announcement of their own. Hey everyone, Menma called above all the chatter, garnering the attention of the graduated class. Our father has an announcement to make in front of the whole village, something that has been coming for a long time and would like everyone to know. Natsumi spoke up softly, eyes closed, and a small knowing smile on her face. If you'd make your way to our home, there is a celebration going on that the village is a part of for this momentous occasion. Whoa, the Hawkage's compound. Will there be great food there? Choji drooled at the thought. You're always thinking with your stomach. Ino rolled her eyes, inwardly happy that she'd have the chance to go to Menma's home. Pass, Sasuke scowled and left the room. He had no want to go to his rival's home and listen to the fourth prattle on about something that didn't concern him. His loss. It must be something big if your old man is inviting the whole village to hear rather than just have the ANBU announce it. Kiba pet Akamaru as he spoke. Any idea what it is? Shikamaru rose a brow. A smirk grew on Menma's face, walking out with his sister in tow. You'll just have to wait and see. Outside the academy, Naruto made his way out of the gate leading to the academy, a hand to his chin and looking to the sky. He was leaving today, and despite his family not caring, he wondered just what they'd do when he left without so much as a word. I don't think they'd notice, to be honest. Thinking about this stuff'll make my head hurt. Naruto rubbed his temple. Trying to understand his messed up blood was too much work. That was a cheap trick you pulled. Menma and Natsumi appeared in front of their older brother. Menma's arms were crossed and still steamed that the loser had hit him somehow. Natsumi stood straight with her hand behind her back with a bright smile, something that no one could say they've seen on the normally composed girl. Oh, it's you guys. Need something? Naruto was unfazed but did wonder why they were in front of him. They never bothered with him in all these years. Now they meet him outside the academy like they knew him. Father has something very important to say ... and it wouldn't be right if the whole family wasn't there to hear it. Natsumi offered an explanation and held her hand out to Naruto. Right, Oni-chan. That drew red flags from the blonde right away. She never called him that, not since they'd gotten to the academy. What the hell were they up to? Why do they suddenly want me around? Questioning us. Menma glared and took a step. Calm down, Menma-kun. The sister never faltered in her smile. Is it so hard to believe that father and mother would like you to come home? We just left you alone because we thought you wanted your space. Natsumi put a finger to her chin in mock thought. Really? Naruto sounded hopeful. But he was no fool when it came to these people ... He had to deal with this for most of his life, after all. Of course, isn't that right, Menma-kun? Natsumi looked to her other brother. Yeah, sure. Ma and Pa want you home. What he has to say is really important ... for all of us. Menma barely changed his tone to a more neutral one. Naruto gave a wide smile. Well, let's go then. Shouldn't keep him waiting. Naruto went in the direction of the compound, his mind firing off theories on what could be waiting for him. By the way, what I did was no trick. Naruto didn't give any more information than that, moving ahead of them to hear this announcement so he could get ready for his departure. Namikaze compound. The large mansion that housed the Namikaze family was abuzz with the sounds from the vast number of villagers, citizens, and ninja alike, filed into it for the celebration that was being held. The fourth Hokage decided to have a festival for his children to commemorate their accomplishment along with honoring their classmates as well. The great number of people had been packed into the courtyard of their leader, enjoying the food that was available along with the drinks that were constantly being replenished. Plenty of the newly made genin took advantage of their new status of adulthood by partaking of the alcoholic beverages and immediately becoming either inebriated or nauseous. In other words, it was a grand party, and this was the scene that the trio of siblings had arrived to. Food. Naruto drooled when seeing the table that held the delicacies of the village. Having to hunt for his food in the forest of death and stealing anything that was thrown out, the blonde would-be pirate grew to enjoy amazing food rather quickly. Help yourself, Oni-chan. We just have to let father know you're here so he can make his announcement. Natsumi kept that smile on her face. Yeah, sure, cool. Naruto sprinted to the table and dug in noisily. The scowls from the villagers were ignored as he stuffed his cheeks to bursting and swallowed the massive amount so he could keep shoveling more in. Disgusting, heathen, Natsumi muttered. Guess even you can't hold it in, huh? Menma whispered, walking to his parents who were seated on a balcony overlooking the courtyard. When Menma and Natsumi strode onto the balcony, standing beside their parents, they let them know that Naruto had been lured. Minato smiled, got up from his chair, and moved to the banister, a mug in hand. Looking down into the courtyard, he easily spotted the shock of sun-yellow hair, a source of shame for the cage as his failure of an heir looked the most like him. A cruel smile worked onto his face, ready to make his grand statement and usher in a new age for Konoha. Everyone, Minato called from his pedestal, mug raised in the air, and getting the undivided attention of most everyone present. Naruto looked up from the food for a split second only to see who had shouted, and when he saw who it was, he paid it little mind, not caring what he had to say. Heedless of the whatever was about to be said, the blonde's noisy eating could be heard in the mostly silent courtyard. It's a momentous day we find for ourselves. My children, Menma and Natsumi, have graduated from the academy and become genin. The cheers from the crowd were loud and boisterous. With this graduating class, we enter a new stage in Konoha's history. One where we can look forward to them all becoming powerful ninja in their own right with limitless potential capable of putting the old guard to shame. Minato roused the crowd more with his words, proudly talking up his two prodigal children and the genin. It was at this time that the atmosphere shifted as the fourth Hawkage's smirk lowered into a grim line, his hair shadowing his eyes. Taking one last sip from his drink, Minato raised his head and tossed his mug away, shattering against the floor of the balcony. All present wondered what could have soured their leader's merry attitude. But before that future can come about, there's a tumor that needs to be removed from our midst. Minato could tell that many were beginning to understand what he was getting at. The only blemish in the class that we are celebrating today, and one that I've had an unfortunate hand in bringing to our great village. Minato raised his finger and dramatically pointed to the blonde failure that had just stuffed the last of the food into his mouth. Noticing that all eyes were on him, Naruto took a cursory glance at his surroundings until they landed on his father. Scratching the back of his head, Naruto looked confused. MRRMF, gulp what? Naruto frowned at the attention. The blonde's cluelessness made the crowd scowl, with the disgust and disappointment being most evident on his family's faces. A storm of negative emotion that should have swallowed Naruto whole. Yet he didn't look the least bit uncomfortable as he looked his father directly in his eyes with no fear. You, Naruto, are the cyst that has grown in our great village for much longer than should have been allowed. You've been given every chance to reach a standard that would give the shinobi force the respect they deserve and have failed at every turn. Minato brought the weight of Naruto's failures down on him, feeling a small sense of satisfaction build as he got closer to his news. It isn't enough that you've been the consistent dead last in the academy throughout, but you have brought shame to your family name as well. Naruto then got serious, having an idea of where this was going, and thought that it would probably be better this way than disappearing suddenly. Menma has already taken the role of clan heir due to his exceptional record, even considering the many other extraordinary genin in the graduating class, along with Natsumi being the top kunoichi. It isn't enough to wipe the stain that you've given our military and, more importantly, our family name ... And that is why I have come to the decision that I feel will truly erase this. Minato paused, looking over the crowd as they waited in anticipation for the words that would leave their leader's mouth. I, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage of Konoha, hereby use my power to excommunicate you from the Namikaze family, and with permission from the last remaining Uzumaki, my wife Kushina, also remove you from the Uzumaki clan, Minato announced, leading to the cheers of the village. The adults were happy that what they believed to be the living embodiment of the demon would be removed from their great leader's family. And to them, this meant that their abuse could continue without the tiny amount of guilt they could possibly feel from damaging a relative of the Hokage. The new genin, who'd inherited their hatred from their parents, felt no remorse for the loser, as they felt it was a justified action since Naruto had lived up to the expectations set for the eldest child of a clan. And Naruto, he stood in the middle of the chorus of cheers, arms crossed over his chest and his hair over his eyes, accepting the ridicule. A frown marred his face, hearing the mocking laughs of the shinobi and civilians, food being thrown at the status-stripped blonde along with splashed drinks. You've been waiting to do this, haven't you, Hokage? Naruto finally spoke up, looking straight at his family, seeing a smile and a hand covering Natsumi's mouth as she giggled. Fine by me. His words managed to silence the entire courtyard. All mouths were wide open in shock that this demon child could speak to their leader in such a way. An inebriated Kiba let this frustration be known as he walked up to the blonde and grabbed him by his tattered jacket's collar. You'd better watch your mouth. Hokage-sama is doing this to strengthen the village. You had no right to be a part of his family in the first place. Naruto didn't regard Kiba even with the proximity, keeping his focus on the Namikaze family as he was finally officially free from them. I was never part of their family to begin with. Families lift each other up and care for each other. I've never been cared for by anyone in this village, so no one here is worth anything to me, Naruto said definitively with no emotion. A disgrace like you should be glad that they took care of you and put up with your bullshit for as long as they did. Someone shouted from the crowd. I'm a disgrace. Frankly, I feel wrong just for having to share blood with these people. No excommunication will erase the bond of blood even if we don't consider each other family. But it's better that it ended this way because of what I want to do. Naruto closed his eyes. Do. Kushina spoke from the balcony. What can you do? I don't have any obligation to share that with you. We aren't family, and I'm no ninja. All you need to know is I will be leaving the village ... so I can get out of your hair. Naruto brushed Kiba off him. I have nothing for me here, no prospects, no future. And you'll find this outside. Menma chuckled in skepticism. I know I will. Naruto took a step forward, hands at his sides. I don't know where, and I don't know when, but I know that there are people out there that I can consider my family. And I'm gonna find them, even if it kills me. Naruto declared with a finger raised in the air before he dramatically pointed to his former family. And you'll see us. When I find them, we'll be famous the world over and you'll realize how badly you messed up when you see my smiling face. And how do you plan to do that? Minato held back chuckles like the rest of the assembled people. By shaking the world, because I have something to prove, not to you, but my Gramps. The only family I've ever had. Naruto was resolute, remembering that he promised Rayleigh to see him on the Grand Line. When hearing this, the laughter couldn't be contained. It was mocking, condescending, and filled with disbelief. No one present could believe that this failure had the guts to make such a declaration in front of the populace of the village in total seriousness. The foolish teen actually believed he could make something of himself. He wouldn't survive a second outside the confines of the village, and it would be a joy if he crawled back in tears after failing. Or better yet, died as punishment for his hubris. Then go ahead. Minato wiped a tear from his eye, his mirth subsiding. Show me how wrong I am, but don't come running back when you fail. I have no need for those that refuse to learn the place that the world's given them, and the only way for it to be taught to fools is through its fire. Minato finished with chilling words. Just know that you are not my son when it inevitably happens. Naruto turned to leave the courtyard, the laugh still loud, face set in stone, and stopped at the gate. And looking over his shoulder, the blonde smirked to the Hokage and his family and gave his own final words. And when I prove you wrong, you aren't my father. With that, Naruto left the village. The celebration became much rowdier with the black sheep of their village gone. The reminder of one of their darkest sections of history had voluntarily left, and would hopefully meet his end somewhere on the island. Only the creatures that would feed on his corpse would be thankful for his presence. Kakashi walked to his old sensei, his mind on certain business that would need to be brought to the Hokage's attention. Kneeling next to his leader, he noticed that the family seemed to be much happier with the looming cloud of Naruto being cleared. Kakashi, you should be celebrating with everyone. Minato looked to his former student. I know, sensei, but I have news. What kind of news? The Land of Waves has reached out for aid again, Kakashi revealed. Have they agreed to pay for our services? Minato asked. They don't have the agreed amount but are pleading that we come assist them, with the promise of paying us later. If they don't have the money, then there isn't anything to discuss. Menma spoke up, sitting on the edge of the handrail. Menma-kun is right. Without the money they have nothing to offer us, Kushina agreed. Actually, Wave has started to use their proximity to the ocean to bring new business from islands in the South Blue. And that is why Gato has monopolized the industry there. Unfortunately, only a few ships put up with the man's overpricing, as goods from here are valuable due to us being isolationist. Minato educated the two on the situation. If that's the case, perhaps the money isn't such a big deal then. Father, Natsumi had gears turning in her head. That's right, dear. Huh? What are you two talking about? Menma scowled in thought. Wave's poverty is certainly a problem, but it hardly matters in the grand scheme of things, Minato explained. I have ignored multiple messages from Wave all this time with the intent of driving them into a corner that benefits Konoha in the highest capacity. Minato smiled. So, you mean, either they raise the money to pay us and we save them, or they perish, and we take over? Menma asked. Close, Menma-kun. Father plans to get the Wave citizens desperate enough that they cut a deal with us and we take control of their ports. Natsumi elaborated. Right, Father. Natsumi looked to her progenitor for his approval of her theory. That's correct, sweetheart. At the end of all this, Konoha stands to gain whether through sacrifice or cooperation. Minato leaned back into his chair. Looking to his children, the fourth told them, the messages have become more frequent, so I believe the situation is coming to a head there. Once you two get your team placement tomorrow, you will be going there to quell Gato's forces and put Wave in Konoha's debt. Then we will have our demands met and they will be happy to oblige. It would be the least they can do for their heroes. Minato drank from his new mug, overlooking the party. Of course, Father. Quite the clever man, honey. The party continued on into the night, with no one being the wiser of the wicked and deceitful plan that had been hatched. The fresh air of freedom, Naruto shouted, finally out of the suffocating village that had stifled him and ready to work towards the first leg of his journey. Okay, first thing first, Gramps said the nearest way to the ocean was the land of Wave Place. So, I'll head there first and grab myself a ship. Naruto grinned widely and stopped walking. Which way is that supposed to be? Naruto scratched his head, confused about where his first step should go when he saw something carved into a tree. This way, Bakagaki, with a small Rayleigh pointing in the right direction. Aw, whatever, Gramps, I'd have figured it out. Naruto threw his hands up in the air and stomped his way down the path. 6 days later, Naruto came out of the forest, leaves in his hair from going through trees and bushes on his way to his destination. Shaking his head free of the forest debris, Naruto smiled as he came to a bridge with an archway that welcomed travelers to Nami no Kuni, with 2 small watchtowers bordering it. Paying little mind to the towers, Naruto bounded to the entrance in excitement, unable to contain himself as he approached his first new experience outside Konoha. He wondered what the people were like. Hey. He wondered what the culture was like. Hey, you. He wondered how delicious the food would be. Don't ignore us, you bastard. Huh? Naruto stopped just short of going through the arch and saw 2 guys looking down on him from the towers. What do you guys want? The better question is what you want, brat. One of them shouted with a scowl, leaning down to see Naruto. You're the ones that called me, so you must be the ones that want something. Naruto shot back. You shouldn't make fun of us, boy, the other thug groaned. I'm just saying. I'm just going to stop by and wave for a bit and leave, Naruto answered. The 2 looked at each other and hopped down from the watchtowers as a form of intimidating the blonde. Naruto stood in the same place completely unimpressed with their feat and maneuvered his neck to look behind them impatiently. So, can I go now? I'm trying to get out of here before the day is over. You can go in, but only if you pay the toll. The more violent thug slightly unsheathed a rough-looking sword. 20,000 ryo. The lazier one had a dagger in his hand. Oh, Naruto rubbed the back of his head. I don't have any money. Is there any other way I can get in? I don't want any trouble. Naruto tried to compromise with the 2. No other way, brat. Well, there is one. The lazy one had a glint in his eye that his comrade understood. Really, what is it? Naruto obliviously asked as the 2 flanked him on his sides. You could try to beat us, the angry one smiled, having no qualm about killing the kid. Simple, right? The lazy thug passed his dagger from hand to hand excitedly. Naruto grinned at this knowledge and cracked his knuckles, giving a simple answer when he was ready. That's all. Okay, don't worry, brat. The angry one dashed forward. This will only take 2 seconds. The lazy one didn't even raise his eyelids as he attacked. 2 seconds later, Naruto wiped his hands of imaginary dirt, nothing on his person out of place, and no injuries on his body. Behind him lay the 2 thugs, beaten soundly into dreamland welts and bumps on their bodies. You were right. Thanks for letting me in, you guys. Naruto gave a 2-fingered salute to the thugs as he ran ahead to the small settlement. Ugh, that damn brat. He's actually really strong. The angry thug struggled to talk through his bruises. He could cause problems for Gato, and if he finds out that we let that kid get in here, then we'll get killed by that demon. The lazy one rolled over to prop himself upon his arm. He won't know. We'll just call in the demon brothers to take care of him before the news can reach Gato. The angry one forced himself to his feet and limped his way to the village to find the demon brothers. All right, my first village, Naruto yelled to himself, earning looks from the gloomy residents. The village seemed to be in disrepair, the buildings having roofing shingles missing, cracks running down the walls, and windows were broken, with these being mainly residences. The businesses looked slightly better, but there was a notable lack of flair that would entice potential buyers. The people all had frowns on their faces and deep bags under the eyes of the adults. Tiring work must have been a normal thing for the people. The children were sparse in the streets, with the ones seen being clad in clothing that made Naruto's old jacket seem like a suit in comparison. Clearly, the money flow was very minimal, except in one aspect. The only pristine area of the entire village was the port. None of the building there had anything wrong with them, and unlike the other businesses, was bustling with activities as ships were coming and going. Though not many. The only thing in common with the village were the tired workers that were hauling crates to and from the ships that had stopped by. Miserable looks on their faces as they did the work. Though Naruto didn't take any of these subtleties, so focused on his own goals in this village. He explored the different shops, seeing clothes that he'd like to buy and unique stones that were found in the waters near the shore. Eventually, he made his way to the port and put a hand above his eyes upon seeing his goal here. There's the port. They're bound to have some ships lying around. Naruto smiled in satisfaction and heard the familiar grumble of his stomach. And now for food. I can leave after that. He ran around to find a restaurant. Running into one shortly, Naruto hopped into a seat at the counter and rapidly tapped his palms on it to get the attention of the lone woman in the restaurant. Hey, lady, Naruto impatiently chimed. The woman had long blue hair with large bangs that framed her face and a good portion running to the middle of her back. She wore a pink shirt with a red collar, short sleeves with their ends being red, and a blue skirt. "Calm down, young man. My name is Tsunami," the woman introduced with a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes, which were drooping slightly. "Hi, Tsunami, my name's Naruto. I want food. Make me some, please." Naruto impatiently answered and went right back to tapping his palms on the countertop. "Only if you sit patiently and ask nicely," she giggled. "I did. I said please," Naruto reasoned. "What would you like, Naruto-san?" She decided to ignore the disrespect. "Anything good. I'll eat anything," Naruto boasted. "I'm sure you will," she laughed good-naturedly. The teen proceeded to eat the entire menu and some change to satiate his gullet. Plates and bowls piled up on the counter to the point they towered above the two people, leaving Tsunami astonished but inwardly happy that he enjoyed it, but more because of the bill. "That was real delicious," Naruto sighed, picking his teeth and somehow remaining the same size he'd been despite the vast amount of food that he'd scarfed down. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, Naruto-san." Tsunami then handed him his bill, a slight ominous glint in her eye and a smirk. Naruto started to sweat profusely, remembering his current lack of funds. What if I can't pay?" "Can't pay? Young man, how do you walk into a restaurant, eat it out of house and home, but can't pay?" Tsunami tapped her fingers on the counter. "I can't help it. I was planning on leaving today anyway." Naruto got in her face. "Oh, that's right. What if I put it on a tab and come back to pay you later?" Naruto put a fist into his hand as if he cracked the code, only for his face to meet with a rolling pin. "I need that money, and if you can't pay, you'll have to work it off." Tsunami crossed her arms and stood above the cowering blonde. "How long will that take? With all you ate, and the low amount of people that come in ... you'll be working for me for at least 5 years, Tsunami reasoned with a finger to her cheek. "I can't wait that long. Look, lady, I just need a ship and I'll get enough treasure to pay you back later. I've waited 10 years to get off this island. And I told you that I need that money, young man." Tsunami glared. Before the argument could continue, the door to the restaurant was slammed open, letting 4 individuals in. 2 of them were recognized by the blonde, and the other 2 were recognized by the woman. "There he is." The angry thug pointed a finger to the blonde. "Oh, it's you guys. Guess you are tough. I thought you'd be out for way longer, but I did hold back a bit." Naruto sat back at the counter. "You let this kid beat you?" one of the new people asked. He wore a camouflage suit and a rebreather mask, with his odd accessory being a gauntlet on his left arm. "He refused to pay the toll, so we were gonna teach him a lesson." The angry thug defended himself. "And how did that work out for you?" the other newcomer countered. He was wearing a similar outfit to the other guy, complete with a rebreather of his own and a gauntlet on the opposite hand to the other guy. "You told me I could go in if I beat you," Naruto said in his defense. "You entered illegally." Tsunami was shocked. This could end poorly for her. "I didn't know." "They lied." "Woman, stay out of this or I'll have to take this as treason." The guy with the gauntlet on his left arm threatened the poor woman. "I'm sorry, I didn't know he was a criminal." She bowed and removed herself from the situation by diving behind the counter. "Hate to break this to you, kid, but intruders aren't well liked around here." The one with the gauntlet on his right hand lifted it up in preparation. "Why does it matter if I paid or not? I'm not even staying here." Naruto was unafraid even though he was surrounded. "You're gonna get what's coming to you now, brat. Don't you know who these guys are?" "They are Kirigakure, Missing Nin, Demon Brothers Gazu and Mizu." "Let's see how tough you are, kid," Mizu cackled sadistically. "Man, why do I have to deal with this when it's their fault for letting me in?" Naruto sighed. Cover. Naruto runs out of a foggy forest with a horrified expression on his face, while a group of laughing monkeys take off ghost masks and giggle to themselves, having scared him off. "Okay, guys, how about, instead of fighting me, you let me go, and I get you your money when I circle back to the island?" Naruto offered, his hand up in front of him. Why is that his go-to in this situation? Tsunami sweat behind the counter, wondering how the blonde could be so nonchalant in the face of the Demon Brothers. She just hoped they didn't destroy the restaurant. She couldn't afford repairs at a time like this. "I think this kid is making fun of us." Mizu looked to his brother. "Seems that way," Gazu sighed in response. Suddenly, Mizu went on the offensive and moved his gauntleted left hand to claw at the blonde. Bringing the weapon down, claws first, he expected to rake across Naruto's face and ending his life quickly. So, when the thunk of the counter was heard, Mizu was confused. Mizu's gauntlet had become embedded in the countertop, missing the blonde entirely as he swiftly dodged the man's attack. Naruto had flipped up onto the countertop, doing a handstand with his back facing the 2 missing nin and forcing him to crane his head to keep his eyes on them. "Guess we can't talk this out then." Naruto spoke from his position. He propped himself on one of his hands so he could pivot around to bring his heel into the side of Mizu's head. With his weapon stuck, Mizu stared at the blonde's foot approaching his face in mild surprise. And just when the attack was about to reach the astounded Chunin rank missing nin, Gazu came to his brother's aid by blocking the heel with his gauntlet. Damn, you guys actually know what you're doing. This won't be easy, Naruto spoke to himself, feeling the slight sting from kicking the metal apparatus. Mizu, having gotten free from the counter, and Gazu both went to slash into the blonde who was righting himself on the counter. With a coordinated clawing motion, the brothers crossed their gauntlets through the air with Naruto landing behind them. This one is slippery. Gazu looked behind him to see that the blonde had taken out the two thugs once again when they attempted a sneak attack on the rebellious blonde. Team attacks are the way to go. He can't dodge forever, Mizu. Don't have to tell me. Looks like the brat has a little up his sleeves after all, Mizu scowled. Taking advantage of the boy's lapse in attention, the two went on the offensive once again. Mizu again went over the teen and Gazu went low, cutting the blonde's maneuverability and locking him from dodging left or right. Naruto looked behind him to see the two upon him and jumped into the air while twisting his body into the slight opening that they had between them. While the two criminals whiffed the attack, looking to their sides as they passed him, they missed the blonde's legs as he brought them out in a wheel kick that slammed the two into the boarded floor of the restaurant. This is why I hate fighting ninja. All you guys do is sneak attacks, Naruto grunted as he landed. The two brothers pulled themselves up from the floor and with little warning other than a look to each other they fired a shuriken-like chain from a hole in the gauntlets that connected into one long weapon. Guiding their weapon, the two men had their new weapon loop above the shocked blonde who lunged behind a table to hide from sight. Heh, these guys are pretty good, but that isn't gonna stop me. Naruto brought a fist up behind the table, a slight swishing being heard for those that listened. Hiding won't save you, Mizu growled, his brother disconnecting his chain from his so they could retract them and fire them through the table and tear it apart. Naruto, avoiding the sharp chains, jumped from behind the table at the same moment the missing nin had torn it asunder. His fist at his side, Naruto smirked at the two and made a punching motion. What is he doing? Gazu narrowed his eyes, watching the blonde aim at his brother and thrust his fist forward. Keizen, Naruto shouted with his punch, a compressed air fist launched from his arm, striking the wild brother in the chest and sending him flying back. A wind user, eh? Gazu reasoned. Cough, it didn't cut me, though. It was all force, Mizu wheezed, wincing in pain. Not too good at using your chakra, brat. No, I don't use it stuff. I ate a devil fruit, Naruto smiled. A devil fruit? Gazu seemed shocked. I thought those were supposed to be a myth. Mizu stood back up. In the blues they are. I ate the K's no mai, so I can manipulate and make wind, Naruto explained. Unknown to him. While taking the time to explain his abilities, the demon brothers secretly reconnected their chains behind the talking blonde. No opening could be made in a fight that would not be exploited by ninja. If it's all the same with you guys, I'm going to end this and get out of here now. I have waves calling out for me. Naruto summoned winding gusts around his arms, ready to end the fight between the three. Sure thing, kid. Mizu pulled his chain with his brother and wrapped the blonde up in the sharp chain, pulling it taut and forcing his arms to his sides at the same time. You stepped on the wrong toes, kid. It's better that we're the ones that kill you. If Gato found out that you were running amok ... he'd send a real demon after you. I don't even know who you guys are talking about, Naruto grunted in slight discomfort. Ignorance is bliss, I suppose. Consider it a comfort on your way to hell. Gazu tensed his arm to pull along with his brother and shred the teen. I don't plan on dying here, you jerks. Without hesitation, no thought on his predicament and only on his escape, Naruto twisted quickly and yanked the two men toward him to the point they soared through the air. Releasing the wind around his arms in a burst, Naruto was released from the chains and immediately recalled the wind to his arms. Circling his arms in front of him, Naruto held the palms toward the flying ninja and met them in the air before striking them with his palms while releasing the swirling winds as added force. Shoryu Fuyashi, Naruto called his attack, appearing behind the struck ninja as they whirled through the air, a palm mark appearing on their chests from the force of the strike and coughing blood. Their unconscious bodies fell to the ground shortly after, unmoving with whited-out eyes. The demon brothers, Kirigakure missing nin, Gato's third strongest defense in wave, had been defeated by a lone blonde teen. Man, so much for getting out of here without causing trouble. Naruto looked back to the fallen opponents. He then took stock of the destruction his fight had caused to the restaurant, and began to sweat, imagining the reparations the woman would extract from him. With that quick observation, the blonde beat a hasty retreat from the restaurant, fully intent on procuring a vessel before the woman could find him. The citizens rose a confused brow at the sweating and panicked blonde as he ran through the village to get to the port. Don't worry, Tsunami. I promise I'll make my way back here one day and pay you back in full. Naruto resolved. Even if it takes months or years, decades. Naruto's voice trailed off as he bargained with himself on the exact time that he might make his way back here from his journey. Back in the restaurant in question, the woman opened a clenched eye when she realized that the bout was over. Tentatively raising a hand to the counter, she peeked over it to see if the poor blonde was on the ground beaten and bloodied by the demon brothers and hoped it was at least a quick death. To her shock, not only was the blonde teen not dead, the demon brothers were on the ground defeated. The woman couldn't believe her eyes. That blonde lout that tried to dine and dash was able to defeat Chunin-level ninja like they were nothing. Against her better judgment, Tsunami had a burgeoning sense of hope begin to blossom. Tsunami-san, what was that commotion? A concerned bystander ran into the business and his eyes widened when he saw the 4 unconscious bodies on the floor. Are those the demon brothers? Tsunami-san, what happened here? Are you all right? He asked rapidly, though it seemed the woman wasn't paying any attention. The woman finally registered that her patron had booked it once he had defeated the ninja and got a tick mark on her forehead in annoyance. He causes all that trouble and still doesn't pay me. That boy. Tsunami brought herself up and made for the door, intent on finding the teen. Wait, Tsunami-san, what are you doing? Please tell me what happened. Turning to the man, Tsunami had a smile on her face even in this odd situation and answered, I think I've found a glimmer of hope for us ... and I can't let him get away. Lock the 4 of them up before they regain consciousness. Tsunami ordered the man. What's gotten into her? Gato won't like this, but this is a golden opportunity. I hope whoever this is up to the challenge. The man sighed and began to carefully tie up the 4 criminals. At the port. Come on, old man. I just need a ship to get out of here. Naruto shouted to an old man working at the port, bargaining for a dinghy. And I told you, you disrespectful brat, you need money. The man shot back, sick of dealing with the stubborn teen. What is it with this place and money? If people need something, shouldn't they just get it for free? What kind of fantasy world are you living in? The man was honestly appalled at how stupid this kid was. That thing looks like it's about to sink anyway, so why not just give it to me? Naruto argued in the face of the man. If you want it, then the condition doesn't matter. It's worth something as soon as there is interest, and when there's interest, there's money to be made. The man finished with a greedy glint in his eyes that made Naruto sweat drop. Everyone here is obsessed. Naruto crossed his arms, trying to think of a solution. He didn't want to just up and steal the boat from the man, but he'd gotten into way more trouble than he wanted in this village that was supposed to be a small stop. So, Naruto-san, money problems still plaguing you? A voice he recognized came up behind him, draped an arm around his shoulder. Naruto looked to his side and paled when was met with the sinister grin of Tsunami. Dark shadows crossed her face and her hair seemed wild as she hooked her arm harder, making it choke the blonde. You know this hoodlum, Tsunami? The man asked, chuckling while watching the blonde he'd been getting into it with struggle when a woman had her sights set on him. Yes, I do. He tried to get out of paying for his food. She squeezed harder and watched the blonde turn blue. Ugh, I told you I'd pay you back later. Please, a hoodlum like you. You'd never come back if we let you go. The man growled. I wasn't raised to break my word. My gramps would kill me if I did that ... One of the greatest measures of a man is keeping his word ... It just would have taken me a long time. Any modicum of respect the man would have gotten from the resolute words of the blonde died right there. On the other hand, Tsunami's malicious smile grew into a genuine smirk at the blonde's words. Well, Naruto-san, today is your lucky day. Tsunami released the blonde, who took a gasp of air. Huh? He asked, confused along with the man. I have a proposition for you, and if you do it, I'll happily waive that bill of yours. Tsunami had the blonde hook, line, and sinker with the juicy bait she was waving in front of his face, and she knew it. Nani? Naruto looked dumbfounded and tilted his head. Wasn't this woman just about to choke him to death and ironically not get her money from him? Now she wants him to do some job for her. Something is fishy. I don't want to work in that restaurant for 5 years, lady, Naruto preemptively denied. Come now, that can be water under the bridge if you help me. Tsunami then offered something that she knew the blonde couldn't refuse. Why not come to my home and at least hear my proposal ... We can talk about it over dinner. Okay, Naruto without an ounce of trepidation or indecision agreed at the promise of the woman's delicious food. Men's stomachs, the ever-reliable tool for a woman. The blonde charged ahead, not knowing where the residence was but with great enthusiasm and bouncing on the balls of his feet. Tsunami, are you sure that this hooligan can be trusted? Seems he has no problem in being a criminal. The man looked to the energetic blonde. That's all the better for us with what I have in mind. Tsunami strode away at that, not giving anything away regarding her plans for the blonde. Wow, a real table. This is great. Naruto jittered in place at the table, clanging his silverware together. This was a novel experience for him. Sitting at a table, set for 4 people, waiting for a good meal. I in a home. So, this is what it feels like. You know, Naruto-san, I don't think I have ever seen anyone be so excited over a simple dinner. Tsunami giggled as she started setting the plates of food on the table. One in front of Naruto, hers going next to his, one across from him, and another that went next to him. I don't think you give yourself enough credit, Tsunami. This food is delicious. Better than anything I've eaten. Naruto dug in wholeheartedly. Glad to know that my food is so good it's worth trying to dine and dash, she teased and watched him freeze with his mouth full. Still on that. He looked to her in guilt. Alright, guess that means we need to get serious. What do you want me to do? Naruto asked, still eating with gusto as he turned to the woman. At least it seems you're capable of grasping the severity of the situation. Tsunami sweat dropped when an empty plate was thrust in her face, mostly. After getting the blonde seconds, Tsunami became grim as she began to get to business. Nervously fiddling with her apron, the woman hoped that the blonde would accept the task. Tell me, Naruto-sen. Have you noticed the state of our village? At the question, Naruto stopped eating, his fork inches from his mouth. He tilted his head, racking his brain for the sights that he'd ignored upon his arrival. All the decrepit houses, the dismal expressions on the people's faces, and yet the port was immaculate. Oh, yeah. This place is kind of a dump. So blunt. Tsunami kept a small smile as she thought this but sighed to herself. She couldn't blame him for thinking this. But the port was great and way busier than anywhere else. Ships were going in and out like crazy. What's with that? Naruto asked the woman. You're right. The port is the most important source of income that our village has. Most of the younger, sturdier men work their day and night. They're lucky enough to come home for a day or two, Tsunami explained. Then shouldn't you guys be way richer? Everyone needs a way to cross the ocean for goods exclusive to islands, right? Naruto raised his eyebrow. Normally yes, that was what we expected when it was first built. But because of our island's isolationism, it was small and hard to start. And then Gato appeared. The guy those ninja claw guys were talking about. He had money. And he used it to expand the port to what it is now, and of course, it enticed potential customers in spite of the subtle dangers that could be presented by docking on such a famous island. Tsunami looked to her lap. The business expanded at an alarming rate. And before too long it became a monopoly. The only real way of making money here, and Gato knew this. Tsunami gripped her apron in frustration. The blonde, having finished his plate, simply sat and listened to the distraught woman, not wanting to interrupt her as she poured her emotions out. He knew that he was our lifeline, and that if he left, we'd be right back where we started, dying a slow death because of our small size and being unaffiliated with the hidden villages. He became our dictator. Tsunami put a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. He must be a tough guy if you couldn't just take back control, Naruto spoke up, crossing his arms. Tsunami chuckled to herself. He's a little weasel of a man. I don't doubt that he couldn't fight his way out of a sack if placed in one. So he hired his muscle to keep us all in line after a failed attempt. You want me to take care of this Gato guy? Naruto scratched the back of his head. No offense, but I am just one person. Shouldn't you look for outside help, maybe? Naruto tried to deflect. He was confident, given the quality of soldiers he'd seen already, that he could easily do it, but that was something detrimental to him. His face be plastered all over the island way before he wanted anyone to know of him. We tried already. We've been in contact with Konoha. Konoha? Naruto groaned just hearing that name. Just what he needed. The village he needed to depart from would of course be asking Konoha for help of all places. Yes, they are close by and are supposed to be the strongest village out of them all, so it made sense to seek aid from them. HMPH, so where are they then? Naruto rolled his eyes and rested his head in his palm with his elbow on the table. They aren't coming. Naruto raised his head at that bit of information. Why weren't those guys jumping at the chance for increased income? If they saved Wave, then they'd most likely be seen as heroes by the citizens and get them on the ground floor for something that could be big. How come? Naruto asked. We don't have enough money. Tsunami looked down once more, tears welling in her eyes. Our first correspondence was lucky enough to make it out of the village, and our hopes swelled when Gato seemed to back off, fearing the force that the greatest hidden village would bear down upon him. We waited with bated breath for the first sign of our saviors. But we received a message from them instead. Tsunami grit her teeth. It said that ninja wouldn't be deployed unless we could get the full amount necessary for an A-rank mission. And our hearts sank. And Gato, after that scare, didn't want to take any chances, so he hired 4 missing nin into his personal army and raised taxes to punish us for our transgression. Naruto growled at this knowledge, wondering how that place, being touted as the strongest village, would leave neighbors to suffer simply because they couldn't pay. Of course they couldn't pay. They were being subjugated purposely by a guy that hid behind money and status to keep people under heel. But we didn't lose hope. Even with everything stacked against us, we all strove to make our way out of this agony. Already on the edge of survival, we all scrounged up the money that we could sacrifice and pooled it together to begin building the fund for the Konoha. We all have given up certain essentials in our lives just to have the chance. And throughout it all we've begged them to consider lowering the price or letting us pay the difference at a later date, only to be denied at every turn. Tsunami's tears couldn't be held back at this point, placing her hand on her forehead with them running down her arm. Hey, are you okay? Naruto reached to the woman in concern. We've suffered so much, and yet people with the power to do something are only thinking of themselves. We can't live like this any longer. So when I saw you, Naruto-san, and how you stood up to Gado's men, I couldn't help but feel hopeful that someone had finally come through our home with the power to help us. Tsunami gripped the blonde's tattered collar, surprising him. Please. Tsunami's desperation was palpable. Naruto-san, you have to help us. Tsunami laid all her troubles on the table, her strength going as she relived the torture that she and her home had to go through. Naruto placed his hands on hers, slowly taking them off his person and bringing them in between him. His face was stoic, and his mouth was in a thin line as he seemingly mulled over his answer. I can't. The woman's heart broke when she heard this. Naruto seemed a nice person, a bit rough around the edges, but a clear moral code drove him. The blonde, with his power, could have easily eaten at her restaurant and threatened her for pursuing the bill that he had incurred, but he'd promised to pay her later instead. How could a person like that deny helping those in need? Don't get me wrong. I don't like what's happening to you guys here and I want to do something, but I can't. Naruto let go of the woman's hands and finished with words that shook her. It isn't my problem. This made her livid. What about a man keeping his word? Was that all a lie? No, I plan to come back with the money that I owe you. I'm giving you a way out of doing that. Why not take it? That puts me on the spot and in the limelight. I've told you before that I just came here to set off to sea, and getting into trouble for a bunch of people I don't know isn't worth the heat. I'll be a target sooner than I want. Naruto justified his actions. This stunned the woman into silence, and she found that she couldn't muster any more anger. His answer was simple, yet true. He would become a criminal in legal terms since Gado owned the port and its assets. Naruto would be throwing his future away for people that he'd only known about for a day, and she was selfishly asking him to fight on their behalf. To save her people. In a way it was like Konoha. She was looking to waive a bill for him in return for him doing something for her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gotten angry like that. She regretted her actions. It's okay. You've been through a lot. But if you really wanna forgive me. Naruto started to trail off, but the door to the house opened at that same moment. A young boy walked in wearing a yellow undershirt and green overalls with sandals and a bucket hat with a blue stripe across it. His eyes bore into the dining room as he stared at the blonde and Tsunami. Inari, welcome home, Tsunami called to the boy. TCH. Yo, what's up? Naruto offered a greeting to the boy as he sat next to the blonde, barely acknowledging him. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Inari asked rudely, not looking at the teen and starting to slowly eat his food. This is Naruto-san, Inari. I was talking to him about our predicament and invited him over for dinner. Your mom makes great food. You sure are lucky. Naruto nudged the kid with a grin. Our predicament, huh? Inari sneered, moving his eyes to regard the cheerful blonde. So what? You trying to be another hero or something? Inari frowned at the blonde. Well, you should just quit while you're ahead, fool. Inari. Tsunami raised her voice at the boy. Naruto-san has actually. You don't need to tell him anything. Tsunami. Naruto stopped the woman, nonchalant at the insult that had been thrown at him. I don't care what he did, Mom. If he's going to go and get himself killed by Gado, then you should let him. Only idiots try and be heroes. Inari looked to the empty plate that sat across from Naruto. Yeah, I'm nothing special. I'm just passing through. After all. And I'm no hero. Your mom asked me to help out with this Gado stuff, but I decided against it. They all seem to have a plan, so I think it's best they go ahead with it and hopefully everything will work out. Naruto grinned at the end. Tsunami had a somber smile at that. Even though the chances of them succeeding and gather the money before wave collapsed were slim, Naruto's optimism was comforting in a small way. You're smarter than you look. I wish everyone would get with the program, Inari grunted. Naruto rose a brow and pressed the boy. What do you mean by that? From what your mom told me, everyone here is working really hard to get help from Konoha, they've sacrificed a lot just for that chance. Konoha hasn't come yet, so why would they come now or later? We're an out-of-the-way village. We aren't worth the effort. Inari gripped his fork tightly to the point that his knuckles went white. That's why we shouldn't be wasting our time trying to defeat Gato. We'll only end up dead or worse. Well, your mom said Gato is weak and hides behind his goons, so you just need to go in more prepared, right? Naruto asked, wondering how the kid would respond. If you know what happened, then you should know that won't do anything. They're idiots for trying. We need to keep our heads down and... What have you done? Naruto cut the kid off. What? Inari asked. His worried mother, who had been sitting by and watching the debate, was also curious by what the blonde was getting at. Everyone here is working hard to become free, cutting back their own needs and putting the village above them. Naruto looked to Inari seriously as he spoke his next words. And all I see you doing is whining about how useless it is for them to try. Only people that have resolve to work towards something are allowed to speak badly about themselves. You're just a crybaby, Naruto ended simply. What do you know? Inari shouted and stood up from his chair. These idiots are just going to get themselves killed if they struggle. Inari growled. It's better to go down fighting than roll over and die, Naruto retorted, shocking the two. He then started to laugh at the kid. Your problem is that you're a crybaby and a coward. What did you say? Inari clenched his fists. Naruto-san, he's just a boy. Tsunami defended her son. That's no excuse. When all you do is cry. That's when you've lost, Naruto said with a smile. I gotta say, I find it hard to believe that you're Tsunami's son if you're this big a baby. Naruto didn't seem to care about how his words affected the kid as he reached across the table for the plate that hadn't been touched. Don't touch that, Inari shouted, taking the plate out of the blonde's reach. Hey, why? It's just been sitting there, so why can't I have it? Naruto whined slightly. It isn't for you, you bastard. Inari took the food and ran upstairs. This kid needs to chill out. What got his underwear in a twist? Naruto looked at Tsunami. Forgive him, Naruto-san, he's been through a lot. Tsunami sighed sadly. It's ingrained in me to make 3 plates for dinner all the time, and it seems even with you here I can't shake the habit. That plate was made for my father. Tsunami looked to the space where the untouched plate had sat. Your dad, huh? Where is he? Did he die? Naruto asked the woman and tilted his head when she chuckled dryly. A tear came out of her eye again just thinking about this issue. That's a great question. I don't know, Tsunami answered with a pained smile on her face. You don't know? He's been imprisoned for months. Our first rebellion wasn't the only one, but it was the most devastating. Tsunami looked to the stairs, making sure that her son had left the lower floor before she shared this tragic story. Once the writing was on the wall, Gato's iron grip tightening ever more on wave. We didn't have a want to fight back. We were content on waiting for some kind of miracle to make its way to us, as small a chance as it was. But one man riled us up and inspired us to fight. Kaiza. Tsunami smiled at mentioning the man's name. Kaiza didn't mince words with us. He called us cowards that didn't have the spine to defend what we wanted to be protected, and that was why Gato could control our lives as easily as he did. He would always be in the thick of disputes that would arise between the enforcers and villagers, defending them as if he was the one being targeted. He was inspiring, and it was because of that quality of his that our fire of rebellion was sparked. I loved that about him. Your husband? Naruto asked. Was. But the people rallied. It seemed nothing could stop us. Kaiza led everyone to Gato's headquarters, intent on dragging off his pedestal, only for them to realize only a fraction of Gato's forces had been active in the village proper. And they were decimated by the overwhelming force. Knowing that ridding the village PF workers would only be detrimental, Gato ordered his men to injure the insurgents, not kill, the exception to the rule. The leader. That's how you kill the morale for another attempt, Naruto pointed out. Tsunami grimly nodded in confirmation. Kaiza was taken to the village square for all to see as Gato had his arms chopped off. An insult to the man that would often say that you needed both arms to protect everything precious to you, before killing him for an example to anyone else. Tsunami shook, remembering the graphic image and covering Inari's eyes. The both of them screaming Kaiza's name in anguish as the portly man gave the finishing blow to the fisherman. That was when Inari became like he is now. Kaiza was my second husband. Until I had met and married him, Inari had never had a father, so Kaiza became Inari's world. The unkillable hero that could survive anything and be able to rescue anyone. Seeing that man bloodied and beaten destroyed him, and he stopped believing in anyone that would say they would save Wave, including us, Tsunami revealed. And your dad. My father didn't want to put his faith in a hidden village coming to our aid. When Kaiza came along and rounded us up, my father realized that this was a problem that only we could handle. Kaiza dying and Konoha's repeated refusal without compensation only cemented that fact in his mind. Tsunami sighed. Of course, Gato had gotten wise to our secrets and had more men watching us, so my father's outspoken and stubborn nature had him make a rash decision to fight, and he was captured along with any that helped him. I haven't seen him since then. I didn't even know he was captured until 2 days later. And I kept making him a plate for those 2 days, and since I just wanted everything to be normal again. Am I foolish for wishing that? No, but sometimes you can't go back to the way things were, Naruto answered her, speaking from his own experience and the changes he had to make when his normal was shaken. That's why I really wanted you to help us. But I guess we'll have to keep working for the money that Konoha wants. You don't have to do that, Naruto smiled to the surprised woman. You'll stop Gato, but what about not wanting the attention? Tsunami was confused. I don't want it, and I'm not doing it for you, Naruto answered simply. Tsunami got even more confused at that answer and saw the blonde almost pirate look to the stairs. The way I see it, that crybaby of yours isn't anything like the rest of his family or even his community. He gave up when the going got rough and now he's badmouthing the people that are fighting for what they believe in. Naruto then got a giant grin on his face that looked like it would split his mouth, never taking his eyes off the stairs. And his next words made the mother's eyes widen in shock. I want to see the look on his face when I prove him wrong. He's bound to stop being a big wet blanket if I knock that Gato guy on his ass right. Naruto pondered with his grin. Tsunami couldn't believe the simple reason that the blonde teen had come around to helping her home, even if inadvertently. It wasn't the sob story that she had given him, the tragic events that had led to the desperate situation that the citizens had found themselves in, or even the promise of having an obligation he'd incurred being voided. He chose to do this because he wanted Inari to change for the better. Tsunami couldn't help but laugh at this revelation. Naruto was a man that didn't dance to anyone else's tune. He was the type to do what he wanted for his own reasons. What's so funny? You imagine the dumb face he'd be making, too. Naruto looked to the woman. No, I'm just glad that I met you, Naruto-san. Tsunami wiped her eye of the now joyful tears. So, what can you tell me about Gato's base? Naruto asked. Unknown to the two, at the top of the stairs, still holding the plate, Inari heard the blonde's words. I don't want to spend the whole day taking care of this, so I'm going to go early in the morning. Naruto spoke to the woman last night as they made a plan. That is a good idea. Everyone will be sluggish from just waking up, Tsunami applauded. Naruto walked down a long road that led to Gato's mansion, prepared for the long day that laid ahead of him and a serious look on his face. When it comes to enforcers, my best estimate is around 100 men being in there, not including the ninja bodyguards. Tsunami pointed to a crude map that her father had made when he would plan for his uprising. Where are the prisoners supposed to be held? Most likely below the ground floor. Why? If I'm going in there, I might as well find your dad, right? Naruto offered with a smile. Yawn man, why's Gato gotta make us get up so early? A random thug that stood in front of the mansion's door, rubbing his eyes. Long as he's paying, I could stay up 24/7. So, quit whining, another grumbled, leaning against the wall next to the door. With 100 men standing in your way, it'd be best if you circled around Gato's mansion. He's a coward, so he made a back entrance that is built into the lowest floor's back wall to bail out in any situation. Tsunami circled her finger around the map and pointed to the secret escape. Naruto nodded. If you take that escape away from him, he'll be trapped. Your focus should be on his bodyguards. I don't know anything about one of them, but the one you can't underestimate is Zabuza Mamachi, the demon of the hidden mist. He's a missing nin that was brave enough to lead a coup against the Mizukage and a former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Just talking about the man made her shiver. With these two, it's best to sneak in and save your strength to fight them. If they're defeated, the grunts won't take much more to either scatter or give up. Okay, gotcha. Naruto nodded again, a hand on his chin. At this point, the two grunts saw a shadow coming down the road. Huh? Who's that? The more alert thug rose a brow. Stop messing around. Who's dumb enough to stroll up on Gato's doorstep? The drowsy thug yawned again and tried to straighten his view on the peculiar shadow. Up above all this, in his private room, Gato stuffed his face and smoked a cigar while ranting to himself, and the two Kiri missing nin that were ignoring him. I can't believe those fools got captured. What the hell were they doing? Gato shouted, having got the news of the demon brothers' imprisonment but no detail on who had put them there. Why does it matter? We can go get them anytime we want, Zabuza told the man. It matters because it means some other fool is going and getting too big for his britches again. Gato shouted to the man and gulped when the masked ninja glared at him. Hasn't there been any news? Anyone suspicious? Gato grasped at straws. No, but given our bridge guards were also captured, we can't tell who had come into the village. Haku spoke from a corner. Whoever did this most likely made his way out of here once they realized what they had done. The smart move, Zabuza spoke. He'd better be glad that he left, then. If he was here, I'd be dancing on his corpse for trying to undermine my authority. Gato said haughtily. Hey, is Gato in there? A loud voice was heard. The two hardened ninja just perked up in response while Gato yelped in fear and ducked down with his hands over his head. What? Who is that? The coward gulped in fear. Looks like whoever had caused all that trouble had got guts, but is an idiot. Zabuza walked to the window to see who was brave enough to come here. He looked out and saw Naruto standing in front of the mansion, with Gato's army scrambling outside to meet the threat. Well, that's a surprise. Gato peeked out the window next to Zabuza and upon seeing the teen gained his confidence back, letting out a small indiscernible sigh to himself. He was glad that it wasn't anyone strong or dangerous coming for him. Hey, shorty, are you Gato? Naruto called. And what if I am Brat? Gato smirked, smoking a new cigar and trying to be intimidating. I came here to kick your ass. Naruto called. That declaration made everyone assembled laugh their head off, the only exceptions being Zabuza and Haku. That's rich, Brat. You can go ahead and do that, but I don't think my associates will let you. Gato let out a puff of smoke. Tell you what, you beat all of them and I'll let you see me. If not ... your face can get acquainted with the bottom of my boot. Gato chuckled. Naruto looked in front of him to see that all of the grunts had come out with cocky smirks on their faces. A variety of weapons were in their hands, from swords, brass knuckles, and clubs, all of which were slung onto their bodies for casual intimidation. You'd have been better off keeping to yourself, kid. Gato's in charge of this village. Not for long. Naruto ran forward and socked one of them in the face so hard that he flew through and collided into more grunts. The thugs were all shocked at the blonde's strength, looking at him with a cold sweat running down their foreheads. Gato's glasses slid down his face with a dumbfounded face and snot hanging from his nose. If you guys want a chance. Naruto cracked his knuckles. You better come at me all at once. At this provocation, the fodder all jumped into action. That's more like it. Naruto ran to meet them. Wind gathered around Naruto's leg in preparation before he brought it up in a kick as the large group was approaching him. Kyofu Suapu. The wind whipped from Naruto's leg almost like a snake, knocking into the grunts and sending them flying away from the concussive force. Gato gulped. A wind user? Haku asked. I didn't see hand signs ... That brat must have gotten his hands on a devil fruit. And here I thought they were just a myth. Zabuza smirked beneath his mask. Looks like fighting this kid would be a lot of fun. What'll I do? He's plowing right through them all ... What kind of monster can do that? Gato cried pathetically. Go to your panic room, Zabuza ordered the man. You're our employer, so I'm obligated to keep you safe, even if it makes me want to vomit. Haku, get the seals. Zabuza had his charge scurry into a panic room he'd had made in case something like this happened. When the door closed, Zabuza and Haku put their hands onto it with seals being left behind, chakra running through the door, and pulsing with power. A dead man's seal that would basically be invincible, locking out any outside persons as long as the seals were in place. To remove them, the ones that had placed the seals would have to either die or be incapacitated so their chakra would case to run through the seal. Simply put, Naruto would have to defeat both Haku and Zabuza to get to Gato. Go and meet the kid, Haku. I'll stay here, Zabuza commanded. It will be done. Outside, Naruto had just finished with the grunts and made his way to the mansion entrance. Excuse my intrusion. Naruto called and opened the door. The blonde was met with a long, empty corridor. Oh yeah, Tsunami said that there were 100 guys. He looked back outside and gave a quick glance. That's about 100. Pretty sure. So, it'll be those two ninja, then. Naruto strolled into the hallway, and upon the door closing, the temperature inside dropped to the point that he could see his breath. Whoa, it got cold, Naruto pointed out. He then started to mess around with the temperature change by breathing harder to see more of his breath. While he played, the condensation on the walls began to coalesce and freeze into needles, before flying in Naruto's direction. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And comment down your opinion on this video. Thanks for stopping by and I'll see you in the next one.